Stop! Before you consider taking drastic measures to lose weight, like GLP-1 injections, consider Golo. Golo's release is easier than injections and fad diets. No need to jump through insurance hoops. It's simple. You take one release supplement with each meal. Golo's release supplement contains 7 natural plants and 3 key minerals that target body fat and combat the stress of dieting. With Golo, you follow the Golo for Life plan, where you'll safely and effectively control sugar cravings and hunger while minimizing muscle loss, allowing you to feel good and inspired to reach your goal weight. With Golo, you get an effective and affordable weight loss solution that's clinically proven, because controlling glucose, maintaining healthy insulin levels, and saying goodbye to starvation dieting is the secret to lasting weight loss and wellness. Visit Golo.com to get started today. That's Golo.com. Go to Golo.com to join the 5 million people who have switched to Golo as a better way to lose weight. Visit Golo.com today.
Jersey.
Isn't it about time for somebody's favorite radio program?
Yeah. 97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
Now, live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
1st and 10 at the 19. Barkley back in. Double tight end. Dotson in motion. Hurts back. He is being rushed. He steps up. He's hit. The football comes loose and the Bucs have it.
I didn't play good enough. That's what it comes down to. We had opportunities. You know, it's put a lot of time in this week to take advantage of this game and what we had and the guys that, you know, we had a lot of trust in. And we took advantage of some and some we didn't. But ultimately, it starts with me.
And welcome aboard a Monday edition of the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Merrill Reese, Mike Quick, you heard the game right here on 97.3. That was maybe the key moment in the game. That third down play on the 19-yard line, Jalen Hurts fumbles the ball right when you felt like maybe there was a little momentum change. And then the turnover again, another turnover for Jalen Hurts. The Eagles lose, but it's a top-to-bottom loss here, man. This one, you can pick and poke from all the different angles, and we will, and we want to hear from you. 609-403-0973 on the text board, 609-403-0973. I'm Mike Gill. Josh Henning back in the Ocean Casino Resort Studios. PG is here at the Fanatics Sportsbook Gallery Bar Book and Games on a Monday where the Eagles really just got dominated. I mean, that game was really never close. That third down play with the fumble was about as close as they got. You know, you had the blocked extra point that resulted in 2 points that really made that game interesting. It was a 3-point swing, which made that game a 2-possession game. Well, in the 2 possessions, the Eagles end up getting the ball back and maybe had their best drive of the day. They get down to the Tampa Bay 19-yard line, and then they fumble. And at that moment, the game was pretty much over, but that was the one shot they had to get in. But it was a game that they just never felt like they were in the game at all. And unfortunately, we have so much to dive into on a day where, listen, this team has really struggled against that Tampa Bay team. Now, listen, I will say this. I do want to stress my expectations of the offense without Lane Johnson, A.J. Brown, and Devontae Smith. I'm not going to overreact about the offense. Because quite frankly, big picture, if your offense is what you had personnel-wise yesterday, of course this team isn't doing anything. If you told me at the beginning of the season that's my offensive game personnel, then my expectations are very low. But defensively, what the hell is my defense right now? 16 missed tackles in the game yesterday. 16! The game plan was pretty evident from Tampa Bay. 1, 2, 3, get the ball out. The ball got out in an average of 1.5 seconds. There was no pass rush, but they were letting Tampa Bay catch the ball and make plays after the catch. So, quite frankly, the game plan defensively yesterday can certainly be questioned. Let's get into it. There were so many things. Offense, inept. Defense, completely inept. And then the special teams problems that you had yesterday, a whole nother element of it, that the special teams problems had to play a factor in the game. You had a player after the game, Isaiah Rodgers, say that he purposely pushed the player into the punt returner so that he could try to get a running into the kicker, a fair catch interference call. I mean, the lack of awareness is just off the charts in a play like that. And I know we're going to point the finger and say they were not prepared. Nick Sirianni, after the game, point the finger at me. It all starts with me. It's always me. Is he right? Do you look at Nick Sirianni and say that team was not prepared to play yesterday? The game plan on defense. Listen, I don't know how much game plan on defense Nick Sirianni has to, I don't know how much of a factor he is in the game planning on the defense, quite frankly. I think Vic Fangio runs that defense, and I don't think Nick Sirianni has a lot of say on the defensive game plan. I really don't. So I got to look at Vic Fangio and say, they brought Vic Fangio in here, and people were excited about getting a guy in here who was a veteran defensive coordinator, has had some success, and I got to ask the question, after a game in a week where they looked pretty good defensively, the fall-off was unbelievable yesterday. That defense yesterday was terrible, and there's a lot of reasons why. Now, listen, you have 16 missed tackles in the game. 16! I go back to that number. I can't even believe I read that ESPN Next Gen Stats. 16 missed tackles in the game, which resulted in over 100 yards of total offense for Tampa Bay in the 16 missed tackles. But do I take that game yesterday and say, defensively, that the team is simply not good enough defensively, or do I go back to the week before against New Orleans and say, hey, listen, that team can be a better defense? I don't know what to think of what I saw yesterday. Look, they kept flashing it up on the screen. It felt like it was 106 degrees on the field yesterday. And I thought Tom Brady brought up an interesting point, saying, hey, playing in the Northeast and then going down there, you actually have a better advantage early in the season at home for a team like Tampa than you do later in the year, where it's vice versa for the Northeast teams. In the Northeast, you have a more of an advantage later in the year because it's colder. But I think this is a team yesterday that was gassed. The defense yesterday, missed tackles, all of the things that were happening on defense. The time of possession in that game, at one point, it was doubled. The Eagles were on the field defensively for over 30 minutes in that game. They were double the Buccaneers. So there is a part of you that says, of course the defense was gassed. They were just on the field. But at the same time, they were on the field because they couldn't get a stop. They couldn't do anything. It felt like any time that Baker Mayfield dropped back to pass, there was somebody just running lanes wide open. And that was very reminiscent of what we saw the last 7 games of last year. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. That's the text board. I certainly am interested to see who you guys today are looking at. Are you looking at, and I haven't even gotten to the guy at the top of my list. Who's at the top of your list today? Who's at the top of your list today?
There's a lot of guys to have that at the top of the list.
It's a lot of options.
I'm going to put it squarely on Nick Sirianni.
You go Sirianni.
I go Sirianni.
He's your number one.
Yes. I don't care about the injuries. We get it. But if you look around the league, there's injuries all over the place. And these coaches coach their guys up. Coaching matters in the NFL. And if you look at Green Bay, I know they lost yesterday, but they didn't have Jordan Love. They stayed afloat. Now the Eagles are 2-2. I get that. But San Francisco, no C-Mac, no Debo the past couple games. To me, coaching. They lost yesterday to Minnesota.
No, San Francisco, the 2 games that Debo didn't play, they lost.
Right, to Minnesota was one of them. I know that. And again,
they won yesterday.
But coaching matters.
I agree. Listen, I'm not taking the coach is not absolved.
For Sirianni to not have those guys prepared yesterday.
The coaching is not absolved of this. But what I want to ask people is, I know our knee-jerk reaction is to blame the coach. Always. It's always the first thing that Philadelphia fans go for.
Or the quarterback.
But I would say to you guys out there, and Sirianni's on my list, I would say he has to be on the list. He has to be on the list. The team just did not respond. They did not look prepared. But I will ask this question because I think these questions have to be asked when you're trying to find out what's wrong with this team. Look, if I told you they were going to play a game without A.J. Brown, Lane Johnson, and Devontae Smith, do you feel good about that?
No.
Okay.
But you got to find way. You can't get blasted 33-16.
I would say
you can't go 3 and out the first 2 drives of the game and not have Barkley involved at all.
You said you can't get blasted 33-16. So they put 16 points up. Okay, and then Hurts, the turnover on Jalen Hurts, I thought was a huge moment in that game.
They were probably going to score on that drive
because they could have get some points on that drive. Changes the dynamic of that game. The thing that I'm more disappointed in, so yes, Sirianni is on the list. Hurts is high on that list. He's probably number 2 on my list. But my number 1 has got to be Vic Fangio and the defense yesterday. For last week, we gave the defense a game ball for them basically winning the game for you on the road to take that Saints team and shut them down. I thought the defense got the game ball last week. Who's on my list? Number 1 at the top? It's got to be Fangio for 2 reasons. 1, Sirianni has nothing to do with the defensive game plan. Let's be honest. He's an offensive coach, just like Doug Peterson didn't have anything to do when he was here. He didn't walk into the defensive coordinator's office and say, here's the game plan this week. No, Jim Schwartz ran the Eagles' defense. Jim Johnson ran the Eagles' defense. Andy Reid didn't go in there. Andy Reid doesn't go into
Steve
Spagnuolo and tell him what he wants defensively.
Those 2 guys are still coaching together, by the way.
But my point is, when you have an offensive-minded head coach and you have a defensive coordinator that is a veteran guy like that, the offensive-minded head coach doesn't walk into Vic Fangio and tell him how it's done. Fangio tells him, I got the defense, you stick to the offense, and this is how this is going to work. So to me, Fangio is number 1 on my list because that defense was not prepared for that game yesterday. They were not prepared for that game.
Is the talent there?
They were there the week before.
They were there last week.
They weren't there against Green Bay or Atlanta.
Well, that's not true because in Atlanta they were good until the 2 minutes left in the game.
Yeah, in the Atlanta game.
I don't buy that. I'm giving them one game ball out of 4.
The Atlanta game, they had given up 15 points into the last 50 seconds of that game. They played a pretty good game. Talent is the talent there. They're not a top 5 defense in this league. But what they were yesterday was a bottom 5 defense. And that is not what you signed Vic Fangio up for.
And Mike,
so to me, Fangio, sadly, because I didn't think this was going to be a conversation at all this year. I figured Fangio comes in and he helps this defense go from a complete negative last year to a unit that will help them win some games. Yesterday, when you are down A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Lane Johnson, and your offense is struggling, they gave your offense no chance to compete in that game by being down 21. It should have been 28-0.
The guy dropped a touchdown.
The guy drops a touchdown.
Yep.
That defense gave a short-handed offense no chance to compete yesterday. Now, you could talk about misplays, fumbles.
Missed tackles. What is that the source of? Talent? Coaching?
Discipline?
Want to? Pride?
That's a great question. What do we surmise is the result of a missed tackle is from what?
Technique?
They don't tackle that much in training camp. They don't tackle that much in practice. They don't tackle that much, period. It's a want to. It's a will to. It's a technique. But we were not questioning Vic Fangio as a coordinator. This is a high-level coordinator that you thought that a lot of these technical things, they were going to be cleaned up. I don't know that Nick Sirianni is the guy who we should be pointing the finger out for the defensive liabilities on this team. Because to me, Fangio is the voice and the face of that defense. This is his unit. Now, you might say, well, still the head coach, fine. If you want to go above him and say it's the head coach, he's the guy who looks at everything, that's where I include Sirianni in some of the blame here. But do you not...
This sounds like last year all over again, by the way, with Sean Desai, Matt Patricia.
Right, but we felt that Sean Desai and Matt Patricia were weak spots. No one said, man, they went out and got a really smart, good defensive coordinator. You had a guy who had really little experience in that role in Sean Desai. They went out and replaced him with a guy that many people thought they should have hired last year and were disappointed you didn't hire last year because of the whole Gannon situation.
Then you would think it is the talent. If Vic Fangio can't get these guys to play well week in and week out, then it could be the talent.
But guys, it doesn't help when you have the TV on, you're watching the broadcast, and they flip over to Fangio at one point after like 3 missed tackles, and you see his mouth saying, what is going on bleeping down there? You know, it's like, okay, great. The defensive coordinator is supposed to have confidence in. He's even confused what's going on in the field. So at what point do we have to look to Fangio and be like, dude, you put them on the field?
I think there's a combination of things. One, they got down, and then they're behind, and then they go 3 and out. Now, that first drive of the game, I think by now everybody has seen the play in which Saquon Barkley's wide open.
1st and 10.
And the first play of the game, Saquon Barkley's wide open on a little wheel route out of the backfield. And Hurts, yes, he's rolling to his right. It's not an easy throw. But the throw was like he was playing wiffle ball in my backyard. It wasn't close. And if he just makes a throw, that game is 7-7. And that's a throw that every quarterback in this league has to make. So you're down 3-0. Well, then your defense, you go 3 and out. And then you get the punt. Now you go down 14-0. And then you go 3 and out again. Well, now you're down 21-0. So now your offense, it's already short of A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and your best protector. By the way, Fred Johnson gave up 13 hurries yesterday.
He played 100% of the snaps, too.
Well, 13 hurries. So 100% of the snaps, it felt like half of them he gave up a hurry. So he was dreadful yesterday.
They attacked him. They obviously zeroed in on him because if you look at some of those formations, they would sometimes overload that side of the line.
Yeah, well, Fred Johnson had a rough day at the office, and then you have nobody to throw the ball to. It was obvious early in that game that Jalen Hurts had no confidence in Paris Campbell, Jahan Dotson, or any other receiver. He did not want to let the ball go, and that's a part of him holding the ball too long because he had no confidence in who was out there. So listen, this is like a Sixer game when you lose and you don't have Joel Embiid. And I'm like, listen, it's frustrating to lose that game, but I can't judge. Like, of course, if I don't have A.J. Brown and Smith, what am I? I'm not a very good football team. Well, you put those 2 guys out there yesterday. Does that change the dynamics of at least the offense? I like to hope so. But to me, what I'm most disappointed in, and it's not close. Who am I pointing the finger at today? Vic Fangio's game plan yesterday, I thought was horrendous. And it's like they let him go right down the field and score, and then we keep saying, well, you're back on the field, you're back on the field, you're back on the field because your offense came to it. I knew going into the game that my offense was going to be challenged to move the ball. So my defense is on the field so much, but they can't get off the field because the game plan was so bad. And then the missed tackles. So Fangio and that defense, they got a game ball. For me, I said the game ball goes to the entire defense. They were awful yesterday. They were so disappointingly bad. That defense. Josh, what's the text board reading?
Oh, there's tons of text coming in. I want to let's get them in order here. Big Al from Violin says, the fumbled punt return changed the entire momentum of the game, and I don't think the defense has a lot of talent. It's from Big Al and Violin.
The fumbled punt return's a big time in the game because it's 14-0, and then they get the ball back, and they're right back in the red zone again. So they didn't have to go very far to score a third time in that game.
I don't know what would go through Isaiah Rodgers' mind thinking that if he pushes a guy into his fair catch return man, that he would not get penalized for that. I don't know what would go through his mind.
It's that one to me, I've never heard of such a thing. I've never heard it. He actually gave that explanation. It was appalling to hear that. Now, this guy didn't play football at all last year. He was suspended for gambling.
Well, you'd think he would study up on the rules a little bit with 17 weeks.
What else? You talk about the talent on the defense. I think the Bryce Huff thing is obvious. He can't play. Not in this defense. You know, Baldinger, I was watching some Baldinger stuff today, and he said, watch him play last year with the Jets. The Jets used him with his hand in the ground as an edge rusher, as a defensive end. The Eagles are standing him up, and he is just too high leverage, and he's getting pushed around because he's not a strong guy. He's best with his hand on the ground and exploding out of the 3-point stance, and they're not using him in that way. So this has been a total mess from
the get-go.
A philosophical standpoint from the get-go is you got a guy that you're playing at outside linebacker. The Jets use him as a defensive end. So the disconnect there between Fangio and the signing, that's one. 2, Josh Sweat got a sack yesterday. I think it's the first time really he made a play Brandon Graham had a sack yesterday, but other than that, those two guys just nowhere near the quarterback all day.
Jalen Carter, he was Warren Sapp last week.
Well, and if you watch what the Buccaneers did yesterday, they essentially said, look, your edge rushers don't scare us at all.
Right.
So we're just going to triple team this guy in the middle of the line because the one-on-ones on the outside, they were winning every time, the tackles. They didn't need any help, their tackles.
Yep.
And then you had missed tackles. Nakobe Dean, I think they said he had 7 missed tackles yesterday. He was awful yesterday, Nakobe Dean. And Zach Bond was nowhere really to be found. Then your safeties. I mean, how many missed tackles for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson? I think they said he had 4 missed tackles.
Mike Evans beat him on that touchdown.
So you're not getting the ROI that you thought you were going to get from Chauncey Gardner-Johnson as a playmaker in that secondary, right? And
right.
I think the defense save for really the Saints game. They played a full game. The Falcons game, I thought they played well for about most of the game, and then that final drive they get beat and you end up losing that game. But yesterday that defense wasn't good at all. Period. What else we got?
Tim from Summers Point says, Mike, not firing Sirianni go down is one of the biggest blunders in recent memory. This is clearly a systemic issue. It starts with the head coach, and it bleeds down through all the coaches, top to bottom, onto the field, through Hurts. Also, the turning point was, to me, not the fumble, as I had Isaiah Rodgers knowingly pushing a defender. That came after a huge stop. That's part of the systemic problem. That's from Tim in Summers Point.
If you were just sitting here and you watched the game and you had your own thoughts, you would think that that's a problem. Again, I don't want to just vomit out of the mouth. I'd like to try to get some nuanced takes in terms of doing some research. If you were to tell me, is Tim right? If I watched that game yesterday, and that's the only game I ever watched the Philadelphia Eagles, I would say, you know what? Tim's right. This team has problems from top to bottom with communication and accountability. But then I go back to what Jason Kelce said on the New Heights podcast, which I think we have that audio, and that makes you say, well, wait a second. Are we right about what we're seeing and what we're saying about the coach? Right? Do we have that audio? Kelce on the New Heights podcast when he was asked about all the 4th downs and all that stuff, and he said he holds people more accountable than any coach I've ever played for. That's Jason Kelce. Here's what he said.
Nick, and I really mean this, is one of the best coaches I've been around, and talking about coaching situational ball, really understanding what to do in the right moment, motivating guys. We coach things up in team meetings and hold people accountable better than pretty much any other coach I've been around.
Situational ball, motivating, and holding people accountable. That's Jason Kelce. So do we think Jason Kelce's a bag of hot air?
Well, he is the ambassador, de facto ambassador and cheerleader for the Birds. I will say that.
So are we saying that we are not taking what Jason Kelce says seriously?
No, I think you have to give it some merit, of course.
Okay, so
but
I'm asking Tim in Summers Point then. Tim is saying it's a systemic problem. Does Jason Kelce sound like he thinks it's a systemic problem? He says
with every loss, Sirianni is running out of time.
I definitely agree with that.
And
that's
breathing room.
But that's different from what Tim's saying. He's saying it's a systemic problem which starts from, Sirianni, or is he going above that? Lurie down.
Well, then that brings up a whole Pandora's box of Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman and that whole thing.
What else we got?
Chris from Rio Grande says, I blame this loss on the defense yesterday. We came into the season thinking our secondary was top-notch and fixed. Doesn't seem that way when Baker Mayfield lights you up for 400 yards. That's from Chris in Rio Grande.
I will say this. I thought the Tampa game plan was excellent. And I thought their play design was creative. And I thought that they had a great game plan of get the ball out quick. Now, you would say, why do you need a quick get the ball out against this pass rush, which is non-existent? They have no pass rush. But yet, they said, look, what the Eagles do defensively, they're going to play their corners way off the ball. Too much cushion, and we're just going to get it quick to our guys underneath because we think we can make them miss. It was the perfect game plan against what Philadelphia was, what their flaws are. What their flaws are is they play deep off the line and they don't tackle well. So we'll throw quick underneath and make you miss us in tackles. And how many times Godwin catches the ball and then missed tackle, gets up the field? It was perpetual.
Sterling Shepard making plays yesterday.
Sterling Shepard. And by the way, where'd they find him? On the practice squad. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'll tell you what, though. Throwing to Evans and Godwin feels like you missing Brown and Smith. You take Evans and Godwin off that team, is it a different story? I don't know. All right. Keep the text messages coming. 609-403-0973. I'm going Fangio. Fangio's at the top of my list today. I thought their game plan defensively was horrible. Sirianni's on the list, as the coach always should be. But I don't know how much influence or impact Sirianni has on the defensive game plan. Now, the offensive game plan, if you want to tell me the offense was inept and they were terrible, I would say, what did you expect? You don't have A.J. Brown, Lane Johnson, and Smith. Did you have high expectations? I don't know about that. When we come back, the Braves are up 2-0 on the Mets. If the Braves sweep, the Mets are out. If the Braves and Mets split, they're both going to the playoffs. It's a doubleheader today. Phillies don't know who they're going to play. We get into that and the Eagles and the NFC East and more. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City and PressOfAC.com joins me next, live from the Fanatics Sportsbook Gallery Bar Book and Games at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City.
You're listening with Mike Gill.
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
On 97.3 ESPN.
2:31 Sports Bash Live at the Fanatics Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar Book and Games. Atlanta 2, Mets nothing. The winner in the playoffs. The loser would have to win Game 2 today. Otherwise, the Diamondbacks are in. The Diamondbacks are just kind of sitting in Arizona. They're watching both these games. They don't know where they're going. They're either going to Milwaukee, San Diego, or home. They might not make it all together. What an agony day if you're an Arizona Diamondback fan. If you're a Met fan, if you're a Braves fan, it's a great day for baseball, although this should have been avoided. Having a doubleheader on a Monday and then the two teams having to play tomorrow in cities they don't even know where yet. Although baseball, I'll give them this credit, they did do something right today. Next year for the All-Star game, they're going back to wearing their team uniforms, not the nonsense All-Star uniforms that they make every year. So, let's bring Mike McGarry in from the Press of Atlantic City, PressOfAC.com. I know you're probably watching this game very anxious right now. Do the Braves and Mets have some sort of agreement? Are they going to, split this thing?
Well, usually double hitters end up in a split, right? But for some reason today, who knows? The team that wins Game 1 will have no incentive whatsoever to win Game 2. And the team that loses Game 1 is going to start their ace. In the Braves' case, it would be Chris Sale. In the Mets' case, it would be Severino in Game 2. So, obviously, a major advantage if you win Game 1 because you can save your ace for the wild card series and you take the pressure off. Most doubleheaders end in splits, but when it's the Mets and the Braves, I'm never quite sure how it's going to unfold.
Right. Well, in that situation, too, would that suggest that the team that has to pitch their ace in Game 2, that guy would not be available to pitch in the playoffs in the wild card round?
Correct. So if either the Braves or the Mets lose Game 1 and they use the ace in Game 2 to get to the playoffs, that's a major advantage for their opponent in the wild card because they're not going to be able, they're going to be able to start their number one guy, and the other teams, the Mets or the Braves' number one guy, would not be available until, Game 1 of the division series, probably.
Jeez.
You pitch, say, on Monday, you can pitch Saturday, maybe.
Right. By the way, the Phillies will play Saturday and in Sunday. They do not know who they will play yet. It will be either the Brewers, the Mets, or the Diamondbacks. I do not think they can play the Braves. I think the Braves could only be the 5 seed. All right, so
the Braves
Brewers
are locked into the 5 seed.
Yeah, if they make it. So they're either 5 or out.
If they get in. Right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Mike, obviously a lot of Eagle fans looking at that debacle yesterday. Sirianni, Hurts. I'm pointing the finger mostly at Fangio and that defense today. When you watch that team yesterday, what is your big takeaway?
Well, to me, the defense was horrible, and Tampa jumps out to a big early lead, forcing the offense to sort of play on its heels from the beginning and play catch-up. And I thought it was the defense that let them down and made Tampa really look like, Air Coryell, the San Diego Chargers of the 80s, basically, with the amount of points they were able to put on the board. And to me, it's just part of a big trend right now. The Eagles are 3-8 in their last 11 games, 3-8. And our eyes are telling us that they look like a 3-8 team. So this is a team, a franchise right now, not headed in the right direction. And I think with the way the Commanders and Jaden Daniels are playing, maybe you're seeing a little changing of the guard in the NFC East there.
Yeah, you look at, it's really hard to sit and watch the offense without A.J. Brown, Smith, and Lane Johnson and have a lot of expectations there. But, man, the way the defense, you just talked about it, they could not get a stop. And then the next thing you know, that offense, which is shorthanded, is down 21-0 before they really had a chance to kind of figure out what they wanted to be offensively yesterday.
Yeah, the offense, once you fall behind by that much, the offense almost has to throw a perfect game the rest of the way to just get back in the game. You know, there were points where they could have gotten back in the game and they committed a turnover or they didn't connect on a drive. And to me, Mike, Eagles fans yesterday kind of saw what the Giants fans had been living with, at least offensively, the past couple of years. Yes, Saquon Barkley, big, long run, a couple of eye-opening runs, a good statistical day, but overall, a big loss in an offense that failed to come out. So it's almost like deja vu, the Eagles with Saquon Barkley resembling the Giants with Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I mean, when you're down 21-0, it's hard to get the game, the ball going, the run game going. But they came out of the locker room. He had like a 50-plus yard run there. He only had one carry the rest of the way after that.
Yeah, well, it's hard, I think, when you're down that much, right? You feel the pressure to throw the football and stuff like that. Should they have given him the ball more? Yeah, probably. How do we know that, he had a lot of carries early in the season? He was on pace for a lot of touches. Maybe they took a look at the scoreboard of the second half and said, let's save him. This game's kind of gone. Let's not get him beat up here. Let's save him for future games. So really kind of hard to see what they were thinking of in the second half there. But I think two things. A, they were behind, so they really couldn't run the football. And two, maybe they took a look at the scoreboard and decided, hey, he's had a lot of touches so far. Let's not waste any bullets in this game, basically.
I don't know that we know this at all, but how much influence, everybody, Sirianni's at the top of a lot of people's list. And by the way, he deserves to get called out and be mentioned here. As you mentioned, they are 3-8. This does not look like a team that has Super Bowl possibilities with the way we've seen them, sloppiness, the special team stuff. But I would go back to, I point the finger a lot at Fangio for yesterday because, quite frankly, I don't know how much Sirianni's input is on the defensive side of the ball. They got a veteran coordinator with a strong voice for him to kind of be the leader of that unit.
Yeah, and the defense has not, played well, did not play well yesterday, has not played well earlier this season, and didn't play well at the end of last season, too. So I just wonder, how much of it is Fangio, how much of it is last year's coordinator, how much is the players? I mean, the secondary is getting old. The guys up front, I don't think anybody had Brandon Graham being the Eagles' best defensive lineman, at 36 years old so far this season, basically. The young guys just haven't seemed to develop. And yesterday is a situation where they were just non-competitive, especially in the first half. And really a lot of questions right now about the Eagles and where they go from here. The only plus side, I think, for them is, hey, we're only 4 weeks into the season, and the NFC certainly looks really wide open. So, is it possible that the Commanders are one of if you tell me right now who's one of the best teams in football, I'd say the Washington Commanders based off the last 2 weeks.
Well, Mike, all offseason, I kept saying, I might have said it to you, I said, if this Daniels kid is the equivalent of what Stroud was for Houston, that Washington team could be the one that, every year someone goes from worst to first, and you just couldn't find an obvious pick this year. I was like, I can't picture, but I kept kind of feeling, I said, man, if that kid is a difference maker for Washington. He could be the guy that makes Washington go from the worst to the first. And so far, it looks like that might be the case. That kid there yesterday and the game before, they look like a completely different team all of a sudden.
Yeah, I mean, two things there. I think you're exactly right. Is one, both Washington and the Giants have been drafting in the top 5 and the top 10 for the last 5 or 6 seasons. Eventually, you were going to get some good players or have the chance to stockpile some good players, and you were looking for the quarterback to come in and really kind of ignite the team. The Giants haven't found that guy. Daniel Jones so far hasn't done it. This Jaden Daniels looks, to me, when I see him play, and I watched yesterday's game and the game Monday night, everything seems to be going in slow motion for him as a rookie. He doesn't seem to be overwhelmed. And even though, I'm sure he's moving fast, he seems to glide out of the pocket. He's really skinny, but he has the ability to sort of avoid hits. And I think the really impressive thing about him is the accuracy at which he throws the football. Every throw is on the numbers or in a guy's hands. And accuracy, I think, is the number one quality for a pro quarterback, because that's something that you really can't teach. You either got it if you don't, and Daniels has got it. So, yeah, like I said, it's only 4 games into the season, but right now if you told me what to my eye, who's the best team in the NFC, I'd say the Washington Commanders. Is that going to last? Who knows?
I don't know, but what I do know is the Braves just took a 3-0 lead now and a home run, so they are one step closer to potentially making the playoffs, which leads me kind of to my next question, Mike. Before we get out of here, the Braves take a 3-0 lead. They can only be the 5, so Philly can play the Brewers, the Mets, or Arizona. Is that the path? Is that the better path for Philadelphia? A lot of people, lackluster weekend. Trey Turner's comments made it sound like they were pretty content on being the 2 seed.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, I have questions about I think any one of those teams could beat the Phillies. I mean, I spent the weekend watching the Mets and Brewers. The Brewers kind of underrated. They are good. They've got a really good bullpen. Obviously Arizona, we know what they've done to the Phillies last year. The Mets just, took 4 of 7 games from the Phillies on a weekend series. So I don't think the division series is going to be easy by any means. And I think the Phillies, with the starting rotation being what it is and what we once thought it would be, and what it is now, yeah, I think the division series is going to be interesting against any of those 3 teams.
All right, Mike, I'll leave you with this. Sixers Media Day today. I think the biggest news of it all, Joel Embiid says he's lost 25 to 30 pounds and he's going to lose more. Is that a story?
Well, it is a story, but it's a story every media day. Every media day, Joel Embiid walks in and says he's in the best shape of his life and he's ready to go. If he did lose 25 to 30 pounds, and if he is going to lose more, I think that's exactly what he needs to do, especially as he gets older. Remember the way Tim Duncan sort of transformed his body and became skinnier as he got older. When you're a big man, that's less pounding on the knees and everything else. But, Embiid is a guy who has a tendency, I think, to get out of shape really quickly, to get out of shape during the course of a season. So it's great, and I guess it's a step in the right direction that he's 25 pounds lighter on September 30th. But tell me what kind of shape he's in May 1st, and I'll tell you then, what kind of chance the Sixers have, to win an NBA title.
All right, that's the media day today. We'll have more coverage of that later on this week. The Phillies, they're off till Saturday, and of course the Eagles have a bye this week. So you have a whole week to let it kind of stew in from this loss. 2-2. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com, right here on the Sports Bash. Wednesday, we'll know who the Phillies will potentially play. We'll have at least the wild card matchups, and we'll see if Mike's Mets are involved. By the way, Karl Anthony Towns, you like why you were sleeping maybe Friday night?
Yeah, I do like that deal. It was hard to let go of DiVincenzo and Julius Randle, but I think the Knicks needed to make some moves to get to the next level. And I think the shooting and size that Karl Anthony Towns provides, I realize he's a defensive liability, but I think the shooting that he provides, gives them could possibly push the Knicks to another level. So I like the move. You had to do something. It's hard to break up a team that, was so appealing last year with DiVincenzo. But remember, that team lost in the second round to the Indiana Pacers, and you could make a case if the 76ers were healthy, they wouldn't have got past the 76ers in the first round. So the Knicks needed to improve themselves, and you can't let sentimentality stand in the way of that.
All right, Mike McGarry's back Wednesday right here on the Sports Bash. Thank you, Mike.
All right, we'll see you down the road. Thank you.
All right, Mike's Mets are down 3-0. The Braves with a home run in the 6th. They lead it. If they win, the Braves, they're in as the 5 seed. If the Mets lose, they would have to win Game 2 of today's doubleheader to get in as the 6th seed. If they lose Game 2, it'll be the Diamondbacks going to Milwaukee, and the Brewers and the Diamondbacks would play with the winner coming to Philadelphia on Saturday.
We got to get Ranger Suarez right. That's my big question mark right now. What happened to the NLCS Ranger?
Did you see this weird stat about Ranger? In his last start, the last 2 years, he gave up 6 runs in his last start. This year, last year, and the year before.
I guess that's why Rob Thompson's not too worried about it.
Sports Bash live at the Fanatic Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar Book and Games here at Ocean Casino Resort. Doubleheader Monday Night Football, doubleheader baseball. Stop out tonight and watch the games here at the Fanatic Sportsbook. Coming up, Nick Sirianni's presser will have it for you at 3 o'clock, followed by reaction from John McMullen at 3:30. Football at 4 with Jeff Mosher. Sal Paolantonio tonight at 5 o'clock. He was in Tampa yesterday.
There's another
and
hit.
You'll get his reaction from Tampa at 5 o'clock with Sal Pal here on the Sports Bash.
Okay, how weird does it feel to be called someone's fiance? The first time you hear it, you do a double take. Your heart kind of flutters, and before you know it, you go from let's just enjoy the moment to we're planning a fall wedding. That's where Zola comes in. Zola has everything you need to plan your wedding in one place and have fun along the way. From free planning tools like a budget tracker and website to a venue and vendor discovery tool that matches you with your dream team. Everything on Zola is designed to make your wedding journey as easy as possible. And with invites that can be completely customized and a wedding registry packed with gifts you actually want. Zola takes you from save our date to thanks so much without breaking a sweat. From getting engaged to getting married, Zola has everything you need to plan your wedding in one place. Start planning at Zola.com. That's ZOLA.com.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
All right, 2:51 live at the Fanatic Sportsbook Gallery Bar Booking Games at Ocean Casino Resort. 609-403-0973. Text in your thoughts on the Eagles' loss. You know, I know everybody can blame people, and it's fair to. They deserve a lot of blame. But who gets the top blame? My guy is probably Vic Fangio and that defense. I thought the defense really let them down yesterday. And really, a short-handed offense was never really given a chance to compete in that game. Let's get to some more text messages. What do we got?
All right, so Jeff from Ocean City chimes in. It says, horrible game all around. Numerous penalties. Stupid special teams blocking the back. Hurts missed wide open Barkley on the play. This game could have been 7-7 early on. I feel the Birds were never playing well in 100-plus weather.
Yeah, that play early in the game. I think Hurts is definitely somebody we need to take a closer look at. Quite frankly, the turnovers in key spots in multiple games now, and there are plays to be made that are not getting made. And I've said this all along. Like, I think Jalen Hurts, give him credit. He elevated his play to get to a point. But if you remember when he signed that contract, I said the Eagles were in a terrible situation because, quite frankly, you should not get paid based on 1 year of production.
You called it a no-win situation.
No-win situation. The year before, if that was the year that he had to get judged on, he's not getting that contract. But the year after, he takes him to the Super Bowl. So his agent and him are basically saying, we want to be paid on that year. And if I'm the Eagles, I say, well, what about the year before? I got to factor that in too. And that was not factored in. And quite frankly, I said this the other day. With Brown and Smith, yeah, he's a good quarterback. But you take those two guys away, what is he? He's a bottom-of-the-road quarterback without any – everybody needs talent. So I'm not knocking him for that. But he's not the kind of guy that can get by with what he had yesterday.
He's not Patrick Mahomes.
No, well,
no
go look at Patrick Mahomes' numbers and his numbers. I'd like you to bring those up. Somebody put this out there, the side-by-side of Mahomes' numbers this year and Hurts' numbers right now. All right, what else we got on the text board?
Terry from Galloway said, I think you owe all of us an apology. You talked up Vic Fangio as if he had a single clue. The defense is an embarrassment. No effort, no heart, no soul. They don't care. That's all on the coach. What a disgrace on Fangio, Terry and Galloway.
What was the beginning of that?
He says, I think you guys owe us an apology.
For what? I mean, what was the apology for?
He says you talked up Fangio.
Well, I certainly think Fangio was better than what you had last year. Sorry. So then I owe you that apology. I think Fangio's better than Desai, Terry. Get back to me in a couple weeks, knucklehead.
I told you, Cleveland, that's my test.
Yeah, he said if they lose to Cleveland, he's bailing.
I'm bailing.
On the whole season.
To Deshaun Watson, yes.
Things have gotten crazy. Hey, when we come back, Nick Sirianni's press conference from today, the day after presser. What did he have to say today? You'll hear that next. Then John McMullen.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
All right, hour 2 of the Sports Bash live, 97.3 ESPN. We're at the Fanatics Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar Book and Games at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. John McMullen will join us in about a half an hour from now. This hour is brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating and plumbing service and installation for generations. 609-390-3907, online, broadlees.net. So, coming up, Nick Sirianni's press conference, the day after presser. We'll hear what has changed in his answers from yesterday to today, and then we'll react with John McMullen right around 3:30 today. Sal Paolantonio tonight, but now it is Nick Sirianni's day after presser on the Sports Bash.
Hey, Nick.
All right, we'll get to that in just a second. Nick Sirianni's press conference live. He spoke about 2:30 today, so we got it in queued up for you, and you'll hear what he had to say. I have not seen any or heard any. Have you seen any of the quotes that have come out from this yet?
You know, it's just the same old.
You think so?
Coach speak.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, Doug Peterson last night got basically lambasted, but
He sure did.
Did you hear what Peterson said? And he said, I thought the offensive coordinator called a good game. We can't make the plays for these guys.
It's a two-way street.
It's
that was my takeaway.
Street.
Yep.
And here's a guy, Peterson, that a lot of Eagles fans liked and did not want to see get fired. He gets fired. Now he's struggling down there. And the next thing you know, he's saying, this isn't on us.
But you know what? That's the cost of doing business with a $50 million a year quarterback.
All right, here's Nick Sirianni. You'll hear what he says now on the Sports Bash.
Hey, Nick. I wanted to ask you about a game like this when things start snowballing. What steps can you take mid-game, in the game, on the sideline to try to get the thing back on track?
You know, you're just trying to make adjustments that you can make that give you a chance to put the guys in positions to succeed first and foremost. And I'm assuming you're asking me as the coaching perspective of it. So first and foremost, you're trying to put guys in positions to succeed and make the adjustments that you need to make. And then, right, there's a time where it's, hey, encouragement and hope. And there's a time where it's, try to yell and inspire or, do something on that end of it. And so it's one or the other. In that, but first and foremost, it's trying to get the guys in position to succeed and adjust to the things that are going on, and then the other things that I said.
How do you know which direction to go with that?
It's just got to be a feel. Obviously, the feel that I had yesterday wasn't the right one, because we didn't kick out of it. But again, it's I don't think there's a. You go into things sometimes, Rube, it's like, hey, here's what I want to run against these coverages, and here's what I want to do against this offense, and here's what I want to do here. And that's, when you're dealing with, X's and O's that you can do that. But when you're dealing with human element and people, there's not a blueprint on that. You can lean back on there's not the coverage beater list for that, if that makes sense. You can lean back on former or past experiences, but you try different things to try to get it going. We were down in a hole right from the beginning. I think I was watching the offensive tape again today, and we had 6 plays and we were down 21-0. Well, that's a product of everybody. That's first and foremost coaching, and then offense, defense, and special teams. And so again, there's just so many different variables. Different thoughts that you have based off prior experiences and things that you've learned from different coaches, but not something that you say, this is what's going to work in this particular case.
We'll go to Brooks and then Dave.
Hey, Nick, a quick question before a second. With Ben Van Sumeren in there, was that because of numbers, or is he a fullback for you guys?
Yeah, we'll see. I don't think that's something that the opponent's going to know, and I don't think that's something I'll discuss here. So we'll see what's going on there with him. I know he's been doing some really good things on special teams, and he has great athletic ability. And again, to me, Ben, when we were pointing out our roles at the beginning of the year, Ben was a guy I looked right at and said, you got to be one of our best top 5 core special teams guys leading the charge with your athletic ability, your toughness, your physicality. And he's done a nice job of that so far, and we'll see where that leads.
And it's clear that throughout your team, you've had people take personal accountability. Players throughout the locker room were saying that. Jalen was saying that you yourself have taken personal accountability. Do you feel like there's still times to pick spots as a disciplinarian? How do you see that kind of approach in terms of accountability lead to action and change on some of the mistakes that have been happening?
Sure. You're only getting Brooks, you're only getting a piece of what's going on, right? You're seeing what I'm telling you in these interactions. You're seeing what the players are telling you in these interactions, but we got a lot of time in there too where, the mistakes are being corrected. And we're going to take accountability first and foremost because that's the only way you can continue to, but that doesn't mean as a coach that you're not, yes, as a coach, I'm going to go up there in front of the team first and foremost and say what I screwed up. But then I'm going to tell them what I feel like they screwed up, right? And I'm going to tell the coach, that's my job as the head coach. And I'm going to tell the coaches what I think they screwed, the coaches before the players even get there, what I think they screwed up. And that's not an indictment on anybody. It's all in the attempts to get better. And so again, accountability is key if you're going to fix mistakes, and you've got to look at yourself first. But then as the leaders on the football team, you got to point out what the mistakes are. That's my job as the head coach. That's the coordinator's jobs. That's the position coach's jobs. That's the leaders of our football team's jobs to point out the mistakes that are happening. So I do want you to see in public that it's only us taking accountability for ourselves and not pointing the finger at anybody else, because that's where it starts. And then what we do behind closed, there's a lot that you don't see, obviously, behind closed doors of how we get things fixed.
We'll go to Dave.
Hey, Nick, with a veteran defensive coordinator, I'm just curious your role in developing the game plan on that side of the football. And then what did you make of the game plan defensively yesterday?
Yeah, obviously they'll do the majority of the work, obviously, and come into me, and then I'm going to ask them, hey, what are we doing here in this scenario? What are we doing on that scenario? What are we doing against this type of run? So there's a long checklist of things that we kind of cover as far as, after, they go through the game plan process, because obviously that I'm involved with the offensive game planning. And then it's just, there's different things of, situational things that I'll have a vision on. It doesn't necessarily mean that's everything, that I have a vision on how we're going to do this or how we're going to do that. But there are certain things that I have a vision of how I see our team playing. But I hired him to, I obviously hired Vic to do a job, and he's done a good job of this, of being a defensive coordinator's league for a very long time. I think, the game plan, whenever you play like we did yesterday, you're going to look first and foremost and say, how was could we have put these guys in better positions? And, If the answer is yes, you take those notes. If the answer is, hey, we had them in good positions, they didn't succeed, that's noted as well. And I think anytime you play like that, there's a little bit of yes to both. A question, the question you're asking me, how do I feel like the game plan was yesterday? Well, obviously I don't feel good about how the game plan was yesterday because we didn't play good. And we didn't coach good. And that's why we lost. That's where I am with that.
We'll go to Ed and then Elliot.
Hi, Nick. Just ask you about Jahan Dotson. I know he's only been here, 6 weeks, and he just doesn't seem as involved. Third-team receiver, your top two guys are out. He didn't seem to have a big of a role yesterday in terms of targets. What needs to be done maybe to get him a little bit more involved?
Again, it's hard to force feed someone the football based off of, again, as an offensive coach, you always want to be on the attack. But, there's being on the attack, and then there's also taking what the defense gives you. And, and some of the ball went to him when it was supposed to go to him yesterday. And there's some times, where the ball could have went to him, or something, might have happened that took that away. And so it's, again, you're a product sometimes of how the defenses play as a wide receiver. It's a little different sometimes at wide receiver of how the ball gets itself to you. Again, it just didn't find it. The ball didn't find him as much yesterday, and it has in these first couple weeks. But that doesn't mean we're any less high on him than we were when we first got him. I think he's got great playmaking ability, great potential, and we just got to find ways to figure out how to use that potential.
Nick, I was curious if you could give us your assessment of how Jalen has played in these first 4 games, and more specifically, maybe what you see, if there's any common thread between the turnover problems that have been happening.
Yeah, that's, again, I think as a football team, I know that there's going to be a lot that's always brought onto the starting quarterback, and that obviously we understand that. But as a football team, I think it's just been consistency. Right? Offensively, defensively, it's just been our consistency. And that's something I got to do as a head coach, is make sure that, our consistency is there. We missed 1 tackle last week. We missed more, 14 or whatever this week. And again, just the consistency of third down, consistency of red zone. We haven't been great in the red zone. And then yesterday we were a little bit better there. And so again, it's just that consistency thing of the entire team, and myself, Jalen, offense, defense, special teams. It's all of us. As far as the turnovers, Elliot, that'll be something that we really dive into on a bye week this week, and spend a lot of time on that. Again, I've told you guys that it's not sustainable that, we're -6. That's not a sustainable stat. You're going to be, I'm not sure you're 2-2 when you're -6 many times. Somehow we are. But we got to make sure that makes a big change, both taking the football away as a defense and protecting it as an offense. So that'd be something that, when you go into your bye week, you study everything. You study the turnovers, you study negative plays, you study sacks, you study third down and all the different scenarios in there. You study 2-minute, you study 4-minute, you study, everything. Everything is on the table. You study anything that you deem yourself insufficient at as an offense and defense. You study everything you think that you're good at, to try to, make sure that you're finding your identity and doing what you do well. And so everything will be on the table. That I'll have, as far as with the turnovers, again, that will be a big emphasis this week of why. We got an idea. Obviously, we know we got a good idea because it's only 4 games into it. But we'll be looking at it, even more in depth with the what, the why, common threads amongst players, common threads amongst plays, play types, down and distances, situations, all that stuff.
We'll go to John McMullen and then Jeff McClain.
Hey, Nick. To kind of follow up on Dave's question about the defensive and the game planning, you and I were talking a little last week about Vic and his experience, something you haven't had before. And if you go back to, 2021 with Jonathan and the slow start, you made some adjustments and went in there. Curious at that experience of Vic, I don't know the right word, if you hesitate at all because he's done it for so long, or is it something you need to do no matter what?
Yeah, that's my job as the head coach. Again, the everything, the product that's on the field is a direct reflection of me. And I know Vic feels that way about the defense, but I still, as the head coach, if I feel like if something's on my mind and I'm gonna tell Vic about it. I think obviously you guys don't spend time around me on here, but I'm not real shy about telling people how I feel about different things, because at the end of the day, all I care about is us winning. And that would be malpractice on my part if I was feeling something about the defense. Jonathan Gannon, Vic Fangio, you name the coordinator. If I didn't say anything about that, what I feel. So, again, you have visions of things how you see it, in different scenarios. But we watched that tape together. We sat in there today, watched the entire tape together, went through all of it, talked about, what the issue was for each play, that we failed on, what the answer, what the solution. We discussed, different things, players, personnel, past experiences of what's worked against those different things. And so that's an organic conversation, and that's like, like how we talked about with the offense, that it's, everybody's involved in that, not just Vic, not just me, not just Vic and I, but the entire defense.
We'll go to Jeff and then Martin.
Nick, on Jalen, on the strip sack in which Jalen fumbled, you didn't mention this after the game, but how much of a situational awareness should he have had on first down in that situation, and then also in some of the sacks that he held the ball too long and took, in terms of, again, situational awareness?
Yeah, obviously we're going to want some of those plays back, and there's different reasons for why they. On the one that was a fumble, they did a good job of clouding up the picture to that front side, and the back, was eaten up in protection on that particular play. So you don't have your check down. That actually happened on the other sack too, where they eat your back up, and sometimes you don't have that that check down. As far as so, there's different things that account for that. Saquon steps up. Makes a good initial strike, kind of moved around him. Again, sometimes it's hard to see right behind you where it is. And, I know that we got to talk about like that clock in your head too. So again, there's so many different things, how the defense played, how somebody ran a route. Grant had to go do something different on the route based off of where the safety was to attract him, and then cross his face. So it took a little bit longer to develop. And I get it. I get that the quarterback is always going to be the guy that's scrutinized for the fumble because it goes on him. And the same thing as an interception, but there's different things that account for it. I thought the protection was good on the play. And sometimes it is. I'm never going to sit here and say it. Sometimes it is his fault, right? But I'm not going to tell you, hey, on this particular one, this was his or that. I'm not going to do that. But there's different things. Hold on. There's different things that account for, the ball, again, like I said, with Grant. But does he have to have that clock in his head ticking? Yeah, of course. That's part of his job too as the quarterback. But there are so many different things that account for a turnover. Again, you win as a team and you lose as a team. You turn the ball over as a team and you protect it as a team. It's never, ever, you win on a collection of plays, but not just one play. And I think that's something that we got to put our head down and just grind to make sure we're fixing all the mistakes, because you never know when that play is going to be. You never know when that turnover is going to be. But again, this is the greatest team sport there is. And I say that a lot after wins. I know I say that a lot after wins and how honored I am to be part of a football team. But that also applies in losses as well, and on bad plays as well, that it is a full team effort.
Yeah, but the quarterback gets paid more than anybody else on the team for a reason.
He does.
Right, and Jalen's in those fourth year as a starter. I'm just wondering if that is, when you're making the corrections, that is something that's being pointed out to him specifically, that in that situation on first down, maybe take the sack or get to throw the ball away.
Again, anytime there's a mistake on the tape, the number of that person is put up there. Doesn't matter who they are. Doesn't matter, what they play, how long they've played, how many Pro Bowls they've made, the numbers put on there, because again, that would be malpractice by myself, Jeff, if I didn't correct and our coaches didn't correct, mistakes that are happening, because we're just trying to get better, so we don't make the same mistakes twice. And so that's the same thing. That's the same thing there.
We'll go to Martin and then Jeff Nyberg.
Hey, Nick. You talked a little bit yesterday about, you're still looking for an identity and everything. I was kind of curious, how long does that typically take? I mean, it's obviously week 4. You guys have had all the training camp, and, so just kind of wondering, how long it takes and what you need to do to get that identity, what needs to happen for that to happen.
Well, identity is what you do well, right? Identity is what you do well, what you do consistent, and what you hang your hat on. That changes year in, year out. What our identity was in 21, 22, 23, all those years had little differences in who you are as an identity. Same thing now. And you figure that out as you go throughout the year. I'm not sure you see any team right now that says this is our identity. There's some probably, but, there's not a lot. You're figuring out what you do well, because it is still a small sample size, and all you're trying to do is repeat the things that you do well and hide those things, complement those things. You're trying to not do the things that you don't do so well, right? And again, it always starts with what the players do well first and foremost, not what I like, not what Kellen likes, not what Kevin likes, not what Stout likes, but what our players do well. And so I'm not sure that's forever changing throughout the season. I think your identity, you can say, is this, but it's constantly evolving through the season. I know one thing that we can say that our identity is, as a football team, is that, we talk a ton about is our team, our accountability, our detail, right, and our toughness that we're constantly trying to work on and become better at that at all times. And we feel like we've had moments of that throughout every game that we've had and shown that. But like anything, we got to make sure that we're consistent with it.
Go to Jeff and then Jimmy.
Nick, you mentioned fundamentals a lot, that the fundamentals need to get corrected. And I'm assuming part of that applies to the missed tackling problem. And, right now, what is your level of concern or surprise that that's a problem 4 weeks in? What do you think is the biggest area of concern specifically with missed tackles? And, do you think there's at all a correlation to how infrequent you guys and other teams do live tackling in practice and camp?
Yeah, I think fundamentals are tackling. On defense, they're tackling, their block destruction, and how you get off blocks. Those are the main ones that are a defense fundamentals. How you cover, how you rush. I really think, though, when I'm thinking true basic fundamentals, block destruction, right? Block destruction and tackling. On offense, I think about blocking, right? The combo blocks that the offensive line does together, right? And then ball security, same thing on defense, how you take the football away, how you catch the football, right? Those are the things that we talk about every single day, that we drill every single day, that's in team meetings every single day, of how we're doing in those different things. So it is an emphasis of ours that we want to be really good at. Now, this will be the week, too, that we kind of relook at some of the drills that we're doing. You try to do as many drills as you possibly can do, that simulate tackling as much as you possibly can. Tackling is something that's difficult for the entire league to really simulate how you do that because you're not doing the thing live. Well, that's the same thing with ball security. You're more susceptible to fumble the football as you're truly getting tackled. So all these fundamental, but it's a long season, and I think what you have to do is you have to put your guys in positions to simulate it while also protecting your guys to make sure that you have your guys every Sunday. And so I think what I'll do definitely this week is, okay, let's look at, all right, we know that the issue, what are the common themes of the tackles we're missing? And I got a pretty good idea of what they are. How do we simulate that in drills? How do we show it in meetings, like from around the league, from us, so you emphasize it? And so that will be the process of what we go through this week. But with the amount of tackles we missed in this last game, right, it led to a lot of extra yards by them. And you're going to miss a couple tackles each game, but that wasn't to our standard. And there were different circumstances of why that we need to get corrected. And anytime I talk about, like, I'm so passionate about details and fundamentals that hurts me when we don't tackle well, because I know how much time we put into it. And so what I'm going to, again, first and foremost, going to say, what did I not do well enough? How do we, and that's what the things I'm talking about to you guys are the things that I didn't do well enough, and how do we correct that in a coaching standpoint to get better? And then the different things that we do fundamentally is going to be big.
We'll go to Jimmy and then end with Olivia.
Hey, Nick, I got another turnover question for you. Jalen in 2021 and 2022 averaged 0.6 turnovers per game. 2023 and this year, he's up to 1.4 per game. So it's a drastic difference, double and then some. Forgetting, what, the issues are turnover-wise this year and last year, what worked those two first years?
Yeah, good question. It's a different product of different things that happen in the game, Again, it's never, there's so many variables that play into it. Sometimes it's how right? Let's just talk about it from a quarterback standpoint. Sometimes it's how you carry the ball, right? When you're running, and it's carrying the ball when you're escaping. Then it's, the time to throw, deeper developing plays. Sometimes it's about the protection and having a hat for a hat. Sometimes it's about losing a one-on-one there. Again, it's going to always, sometimes it's about, the route detail and the route discipline and how that's affected, or, a missed throw or a misread. And the criticism is always going to go to him the most because he touches the ball the most, and he's always going to have more turnovers than everybody else on the team per se. Now, we've turned it over as a football team. Again, I go back to this. We've turned it over as a football team these past, again, this year is really all I'm focused about, and 23 more than we had in 21 and 22. And we're seeing the results of that. As what I've told you guys, it's not sustainable winning games when you're turning the football over. Again, you win as a team, you lose as a team, you turn the ball over a team, you turn the ball over as a team, you protect the football as a team. And so, again, it's important that we all understand that, coaches, players, we're all in this together, because the only way to get the win-loss column fixed, the start of it, is the protection of the football.
We'll end with Olivia here.
Hey, Nick, one of the sentiments among the defensive players out of the locker room last night was that Baker was getting the ball out really quickly and that the coverage on the back end needed to be stickier. Why do you feel like there was that shortcoming? Was it more of the coverage that was being called, or was it the execution within the structure of the defense?
Again, there's times on those, if you kind of come back and look through it, there's always, Olivia, it's always going to be a combination of both, right? It's not, again, we're never going to say as coaches it's just the players, and we're never going to say, well, it's just the coaches. It's a team game that takes everybody. There's times that you could say, yeah, let's be tighter in these scenarios. There's times where we were tight. Baker got the ball out and we missed the tackle, right? There's times we didn't cover down fast enough. in our disguise, and so that's kind of, both and our disguise. We want to hold the shell and disguise, but then it sacrifices you coming down late and they can get the ball out. So that's on both sides of coaching and playing, but we're in this thing together and it takes everybody. So the answer on it's never going to be 100% here and 100% there, because that's just not the way this game's played. That's why it is the greatest team game. And I'll stand on it's the greatest team game, whether it's a win. Well, I'll stand on it whether it's the greatest team game, whether it's a loss. But that's how you continue to come together through the tough times, through the good times, to become a team. And I know scenarios like yesterday, we getting beat like the way we got beat yesterday will bring this team closer together. You're either continuing to come closer together or you're falling apart. And so our goal is to make sure we're staying together through the adversity that hit us yesterday, and just move on and get better from it.
All right, there's Nick Sirianni. I don't know that you took anything from that to make you feel better, worse, indifferent, but the one thing I will agree on is at the end when he said, look, it's always a combination of everybody. This isn't just Nick Sirianni. This isn't just Vic Fangio. The players did not play well enough. The coaches did not have them prepared enough. But what is the root of all of it? We'll get into it here on the Sports Bash. John McMullen was there. I thought John asked a question that I wanted to ask, is how much influence does Sirianni have on the defensive game plan and calling the defense and being a part of that? That's what we'll talk about more on the other side as John McMullen from Birds 365 joins me next.
You're listening with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
As fraud as it gets. They got all the talent. It looks the part, but something's not quite right. When you scratch the surface, when you dig a little bit deeper, you realize there are foundational issues. The head coach and the quarterback don't trust each other. The head coach is terrible at in-game management. And from that standpoint, it makes it hard to form an identity that'll allow you to have success against actual good teams. So the Philadelphia Eagles are huge, huge frauds.
Chris Candy this morning on Unsportsmanlike on 97.3 ESPN. He says the Eagles are huge frauds, and it starts at the top. We'll talk to John McMullen, who was in the Sirianni presser today. He actually asked a question along with, I think it was Dave Zangaro. I noted it down. That asked the question that I want to ask. And he joins us now. Johnny Mack is here, and he is brought to you by our friends over at Boardwalk Honda. Shop their lineup of new pre-owned and certified pre-owned Hondas at BoardwalkHonda.com. John McMullen, Birds 365. I'm sure it was a spirited morning of Eagles talk today, but you just heard Nick Sirianni. We just played the press conference. You and Zangaro asked a question that I wanted to know the answer to, John, which I'm pointing the finger today mostly at Vic Fangio and his defense. What the heck was that yesterday? So if you want to blame Sirianni, who's getting a lot of the heat today from our listeners, what role does he have in Fangio's defense? And if it's minimal, that's why I have Fangio at the top of my list for what they did yesterday.
Yeah, it's minimal, and that's you're not going to get the answer, but I had to try, and it's interesting because if you go back to 2021. When they got off to the poor start, Nick had no problem saying, he told Jonathan Gannon to tighten things up a bit on coverage, which he did. And JG at the time was obviously a first-time defensive coordinator. He's had Sean Desai. I talked to him last week about Vic Fangio and his experience during a positive week. And it's, does he, feel the need to tell Vic, tighten it up? And if he doesn't, he should, because what went on in Tampa Bay is not acceptable. And even if you put the Vic Fangio stamp of approval, I think a lot of the times because it's Vic Fangio, to be honest, people say, all right, Vic will figure it out. And I think for the most part, the Eagles are like that. Well, that wasn't a good sign yesterday.
No, and John, how much, we see the league is kind of evolving, things are kind of changing right before our very eyes, and how much are teams, or have teams evolved to Vic's style of defense?
Yeah, well, so many, that's part of the problem. So many have copied it, and this happens over and over again and again. It's a cycle with the NFL. At one point, it was Tony Dungy's cover 2. Then it was Pete Carroll's cover 3. Then it was Vic's. A little bit of Mike Zimmer mixed in there before Vic. Everybody copies what's successful at the moment, and then there tends to be a tipping point where so many people copy it that quarterbacks and opposing offensive coordinators or play callers get too used to it, and it becomes easier for them to solve, and then you start to cycle over to the next thing, and everybody copies that. I think we're past the Vic Fangio inspired scheme cycle. I think too many quarterbacks have figured it out, and there's got to be evolution. And I didn't see any evolution yesterday. It's only one game, but it was not pretty.
Right. I mean, so the question is, do we overvalue some of the talent on that side of the ball, or is this more of a scheme problem?
Well, it's always players first. You'll never hear me say anything different. So, he didn't tell them to miss 12 tackles or 14 tackles if you believe the next-gen stats.
16. The next-gen said 16.
16. Is it 16? One of them, True Media, was 12, I think. PFF, I don't know what, they were 12 or 11. And Next Gen Stats, I guess, went higher. When you miss that many tackles, it's going to look bad because part of the, if you're playing off, which they do, and that's another stat. Doug Farrar had 88% of the time they're not in press coverage. So 88% of the time, which by far leads the NFL. Now, again, all these things are subjective because you see it right there with, True Media's got a different number than Next Gen Stats. So it's a little bit subjective. But when you get to that point at 88%, it's a lot. So either way, what the exact number is, it's a problem. And certainly the missed tackles are a problem. But when you're playing off, part of the whole plan is, then you got to rally up and tackle.
Tackle, right.
And if you're off and not tackling, you get what you get yesterday.
The game is, there's so many moments in this game. Sirianni said today they ran 6 plays and they were down 21-0. Now, entering the game, you don't have Brown, you don't have Smith, you don't have Lane Johnson. So I don't imagine that you think you're going to score a whole heck of a lot of points here. But how much accountability do you put in that offense and the offense's game plan yesterday, which is obviously where Sirianni is supposed to be more involved? So do you look at that offense and say, look, yeah, you ran 6 plays, but you went 3 and out the first 3 times you had the ball?
Yeah, they were 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. So a lot of people said that with Saquon, the Saquon touches, the lack of Saquon touches. They tried to get him the ball early. They couldn't convert a third down and extend a drive. The closest was a Dallas got a drop that would have done it. But, yeah, it was ugly. Mm-hmm. And this is a lot, look, for all the people, calling for Nick Sirianni's head and now, you got your coordinators. It's not any different because I said it all the time. It's about execution. It's about the players first. And, I heard kudos to you guys for getting the Chris Canty clip up there. I mean, he's talking about the talent. Well, the talent wasn't on the field offensively. Ed Kratz and I over at Sports Illustrated do our top 25 Eagles list every year. Top 25 best pure football players on the Eagles. So it has nothing to do with the impact of the quarterback position or anything else. Just the best players of what they do. And number 1 was A.J. Brown. Number 2 was Lane Johnson. And number 3 was Devontae Smith. And they weren't on the field. So in a lot of ways, you can explain the offense by that. And, when they come off the bye, the offense, I'm not that worried about. It's about, they're going to be good as long as those guys are able to stay healthy and they don't have another situation like they had yesterday.
Yeah.
It's a matter of how good. Defensively, I don't know how good they're going to be.
Well, that's why, John, to me, I'm like Sirianni, he's the head coach, so he deserves something today. I mean, he even said it. Look, it's always going to be all of us. But to me, the offense, if you told me the rest of the year this team doesn't have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Lane Johnson, guess what? My expectations have dropped. Right. Yeah, my expectations are this is not a good enough football team. So I can't take what I saw offensively and hold a lot there. But defensively, if you are what you were yesterday, that's a problem. So that's why I look at the defense and Fangio more so. But I guess at the top of the list, with the answer that Hurts gave yesterday, we have our moments. Are you starting to sense that he's getting frustrated with above him?
No, not to a certain extent. I mean, Jalen's, probably frustrated in the past, the overriding philosophy of constant change. But, that's part of the NFL. They had success early. So, it doesn't matter how he kind of explained this point over the summer at one point. If you succeed, you're going to lose coaches. And if you fail, you're going to lose coaches. Either way. So, change, unfortunately, is pretty constant. Now, you can get in these situations where you can occasionally find the coordinator, and the Eagles are trying to do that right now with Vic Fangio. Vic has said he hopes this is his last stop before retirement. Tom Moore for years, somebody like that who really doesn't have the ambition to become a head coach at that particular age, and you can get some continuity, but that's very, very rare. And especially the way the Eagles do business and have recently done business, they want more young coaches, more innovative, more newer minded, whatever you want to call it. And if you get those guys, they have ambition. Shane Steichen had ambition. Jonathan Gannon had ambition. And they had good seasons, and they got head coaching jobs. You lose them. And then coming off of that, well, it's really difficult to follow up on it. So you don't reach expectations, and Sean Desai loses his job, and Brian Johnson loses his job, and you have more upheaval.
Yeah.
So, and the same thing happens, by the way, because the one constant is going to be here next year is Jalen Hurts because of his contract, at least one more year, even if he completely faults and fails. And then you can start talking about moving on after next year. However, they don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
But guess what? If Nick Sirianni fails, they're not keeping the offensive coordinator. And whomever they bring in to be the next head coach in that instance, it's very unlikely that they'll want to keep either coordinator. And they'll want their own people. And then you got upheaval again.
Yep. Listen, this is set up to where you got big problems if this team falls apart and isn't what you hoped it is because of what you just chronicled. But one of the things, I think Jimmy Kempski asked the question, he said, turnovers 0.6 per game. Now it's up to 1.4. I thought they had a chance to get back in that game yesterday and on the 19-yard line, he fumbles again. How much I ask you every Friday, is there going to be another turnover? And it wasn't an interception yesterday, but it was a fumble in a key spot. That was a key spot in the game. Are they internally, do you think, starting to wonder and worry about the turnovers with Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't been good. I think the last game they won the turnover battle. You got to go back to Kansas City last year. Think about that. So they keep losing the turnover battle, and Nick said it in the past. He said it again today. That's unsustainable for consistency purposes. You might win a game, you might lose a game, but whatever. If you're losing that ratio week in and week out, you're not going to be very successful. So they understand that needs to change. You look at the individual turnovers, and I would say sometimes it's, sometimes it's quarterback's fault, sometimes it's not. I'm a little bit surprised that Nick kind of defended Jalen on that turnover. Like, I blame that turnover on Jalen Hurts. The Eagles don't seem to.
I mean, he sidesteps a defender. Where did you think he went? I mean,
well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
We used to have this problem with Carson Wentz and the fact that, all right, just because you sidestep him doesn't mean he's not going to hustle back, and that's a big-time player, Levante David. Not that you know it in the moment, you're just fighting for your life that it's Levante David, but he should be aware that there's traffic behind him, and you got to take better care of that football. So, I guess the Eagles, wasn't Saquon's typically a very good pass protector for running back. Didn't do a great job on that, but again, he sidestepped it. And, it was the comeback of the defender to knock it out from behind. That, to me, is on the quarterback.
I would agree with that one. I definitely think that, Hurts there, holding the ball to. And look, I think a lot of that yesterday had to do with he had no trust in anybody to throw the ball to, which is somewhat, and by the way,
for that.
Yeah, and by the way, Fred Johnson had a rough day at the office.
Oh yeah, he did. He had a rough day.
He had a tough day.
And, to the point where if Lane Johnson, and luckily he's not, he's going to be back, but if he were out or Jordan Mailata, if they were out for substantial time, they would most likely move Mekhi Becton to the tackle and bring in Tyler Steen. To do it for 1 week, they didn't want to do that, but if it were more than that, I think they would go in that direction. He had a tough day. And from look, they ran out. And this is where Howie gets the blame. Yeah, look, you pay A.J. Brown, you pay Devontae Smith what they make, and they deserve it. And understandably, you can't pour more assets from a monetary standpoint in the wide receiver. Nobody's asking you to get players that are that caliber as backups, but you need a little bit better than what is behind.
Hey, I will say this. On the other side, they got Evans and they have Godwin, two really good guys, and Shepard's on the practice squad, and he's making plays.
Exactly. And Palmer has made plays. I think he got a concussion. I forget his injury.
By the way, Zacchaeus seems to have no problem making plays in Washington.
Yeah, with Jaden Daniels. Yeah. So. He's making plays. They've done a bad job. Really, they've done a bad job as an organization. With developing wide receivers to the point they had to go out and trade a first-round pick for a finished product in A.J. Brown, and they had to trade up in the draft to get Devontae Smith at the top of the top 10, and he was pretty much a finished product from a college standpoint. They're not very good developing receivers, and they haven't been for a very long time. And when you have Paris Campbell and he's your best receiver, and he was your best receiver yesterday, I mean, that's just that is not good enough.
Yeah.
That is not good enough.
McMullen tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. on the Jacob Media YouTube channel, Birds 365. And, of course, we'll have plenty more here. It's a bye week, so it stews even more. But there's so much more to get into, as you heard John McMullen here on the Sports Best. Thanks, John.
All right, thanks, Mike.
He's brought to you by Boardwalk Honda. Shop their lineup of new pre-owned and certified pre-owned Hondas online at BoardwalkHonda.com. That moves the 3 o'clock hour, and it's brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Your trusted source for heating and plumbing service and installation for generations online at Broadlees.net. Call them 609-390-3907. We are live at the Fanatics Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar, Book, and Games. But when we come back, Jeff Mosher is in the house for a Football at 4 you're not going to want to miss, including his thoughts on Vic Fangio, the defense, and is it fixable or is this going to be a year-long problem? By the way, it was 6-3 Mets, and the Braves have come back with 4 off of Diaz, and the Mets lead at 7-6 now. What a game.
Let's play another one. Why not?
But the Mets have now burned Diaz potentially.
97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill It's time for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
Just hungry to bring back another Lombardi to Philly. The fans deserve it. Our team deserves it. Culture begs for it.
Now live, this is Football at 4.
I think there are a lot of teams in this point of the season that don't really have an identity. I think we're still trying to figure that out. I think it's challenging when you've had different moving pieces throughout. And so given the opportunities you have, it's truly a so what, not what mentality, and that's the approach that I've had. I just don't think I've been good enough in those areas. There isn't a doubt of anyone who steps on that field in terms of opportunity. We got to give guys opportunities and put guys in positions to be successful.
That was Jalen Hurts yesterday after the game. He said the team truly doesn't have an identity. Today, Nick Sirianni said the identity is accountability and toughness. Let's bring Jeff Mosher in from the Inside the Birds podcast. It is Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. It's never ordinary a Monday after an Eagles loss. Hurts said the identity, Jeff Mosher. Today, Nick Sirianni said accountability and toughness. That's the identity of this football team. Did you see that yesterday?
Certainly not. I mean, I don't know how anybody could say they saw that yesterday, given the product that was on the field. 2 weeks ago, though, against the Saints, you would say, yeah, they were pretty tough. I mean, they're not just tough like mentally, but physically. They dominated the line of scrimmage in that game, but they clearly didn't carry that over to Tampa. Him saying that, Mike, it's funny how football works, the longer you watch the game. I remember asking Nick Sirianni that same exact question his first year coaching the team, right? So that's 2020, is it? 2021, yeah. 2020, if you remember, they won their opener, if I recall, and then lost like 3 of the next 4 games, and everybody was down on him, and Jalen Hurts, and everything is bad. They got killed by the Chiefs in a game, and they lost to San Francisco. And I asked him what the identity was, and he says, we haven't really formed it yet. We're growing, we're coming together, and it's kind of funny that all these years later, with guys still on this team, Brandon Graham and Hurts and Devontae Smith and things like that, that they're struggling to. They say they know their identity, but they're struggling to carry it out.
That's for sure. They're struggling to carry out an identity. Now, it's hard for me to judge the offense and their identity, especially with no Brown for the last couple of games, Smith being out, and no Lane Johnson. I expect that offense to struggle. Maybe it struggled more than you thought, or I don't know where you're there. But I'm looking at Vic Fangio and that defense, and are you saying, man, Fangio was supposed to come here, and they played well defensively last week. But you look at that game plan yesterday and this defense and say, I don't know where they're going to find any consistency in that defense this year.
I mean, I feel like, yes. I feel like, yes, that was the topic of our podcast, or post-game show, this morning's podcast, is, where are the saviors for this defense other than guys just have to play better, right? I mean, there's nobody. Sidney Jones, I don't think, is going to be the guy that just, I'm sorry, Sidney Brown. Freudian slip there. Sidney Brown isn't going to be the guy who just all of a sudden he's healthy and you put him in at safety and your entire defense is going to be so much better than it was before. Avonte Maddox is clearly struggling both to cover and in run support as a nickelback. Is putting Cooper DeJean in there 100% the answer to turn around all of the defense's problems? Is it really that, like 2 young kids, Sidney Brown and Cooper DeJean? I don't know. I don't think so. I think that they collectively have to play better. But there's too many guys right now who are playing inconsistently and not making impact, not making plays on a week-to-week basis to say 1 or 2 guys is going to fix it all. By the way, 1 or 2 guys who are either played very few NFL games. we're talking about a really young guy.
But the whole secondary as a whole here, Jeff, you got Mitchell, who's played pretty well. I don't know what your take is on Slay, Blankenship, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Well, when you look at this secondary, which a lot of people thought, hey, this could be a strength of the team if Mitchell plays well. Well, Mitchell has played well. It's the other guys.
Yeah, I mean, C.J. Gardner-Johnson has never been a great tackler. Every once in a while, he makes a play, right? Like a couple of weeks ago against the Saints, or I guess last game before this, against the Saints, where he runs up into the hole and makes a great run stop, and it's like, whoa, you got it in you. But this guy, in general, is not a very good tackler, and he'll probably be the first to tell you that's not really his job. But, when you play defense in the NFL, you have to tackle in the run game, and he's just not very good at it. And I haven't watched the whole game yet. I'm waiting for the All-22. Did look like some business decisions were made there once guys got into whether open on screens or open on runs. Like, it just didn't look like great effort to tackle or get off blocks to tackle on his part. And Mike, you can live with that if he's flipping the field for you and, getting the interceptions that he got 2 years ago when you went to the Super Bowl. But, man, he was obviously, roasted pretty badly on the Mike Evans touchdown, the first touchdown. And then there were some other plays throughout the day where you wondered where he was.
Oh, listen, Next Gen Stats had 16 missed tackles. So whether it's 16, 14, 12, whatever the number is, there was a lot of missed tackles in that game that resulted into what we saw. Pass rush in this game. Is this another example of the pass rush is just not good enough, or is this just a game plan thing that Tampa got the ball out so quickly, and that regardless if you had pass rushers that were getting home, but that pass rush looks like it's going to be a problem, but they didn't help themselves with the game plan yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that they didn't help. The overall defense didn't play well enough, I think, for pass rush to become a major factor. I mean, I'll go watch it again, but I'm sure you felt the same way. Looking at the game, it looked like the Buccaneers were so confident in their three-step drops and throwing the ball underneath that they didn't have Baker Mayfield holding on to the ball for very long. So if your secondary or if your back seven is giving up plays that quickly and easily, then and you're always facing an opponent that is ahead of the sticks, as opposed to facing some second and long, third and long, then it's really hard for your pass rush to have any major impact for the game in general. I'm not absolving the pass rush because, after 4 weeks it's been non-existent. But in general, I think for this game, you look at it and say the pass rush wasn't the first problem. It was the inability of the defense to get into good pass rushing situations that was more problematic.
Jeff Mosher, Football at 4. After the game, there was a question to Hurts. It was basically like, hey, do you and Nick, take some time and kind of talk over these things? He says, we have our moments. Is that something to be looked at as like he's at the end of the line with this whole situation?
I mean, I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. I don't know if he had a really long discussion about everybody has to be better, and it started with him. So he took a lot of it on himself. He didn't seem to be a finger pointer in that interview or that press conference, but it was kind of weird where he said we have our moments. I think that was just his way of not talking too much about the Hurts-Sirianni dynamic.
Well, and that's
and so anybody can interpret that the way they want, and if they want to say that it's not the greatest relationship, it's fine. It's no excuse for either one to not be good at their job.
Oh, listen, yeah, and I think, when people look at the issues with this team and you try to bring the head coach in and people say, well, what does he do? And then he says accountability and toughness and point the finger at me. Well, if your relationship with the quarterback isn't all that good and the quarterback is struggling, then you start to wonder, is that something that's sustainable, that you can have the two guys not being on the same page?
You never want your offensive-minded head coach especially and your quarterback to not be on the same page, not see things eye to eye. I've got to look into a few things, Mike, because, I know there's some questions about what offense this team is running right now. Is it Kellen Moore's offense, or is it a modified Kellen Moore offense with Nick Sirianni's fingertips on it, or is it a modified Nick Sirianni offense that Jalen Hurts has some say in that doesn't make it fully a Kellen Moore offense? I really want to go chart the under center snaps because I feel like since the first game against the Packers, we haven't seen under center a whole lot. In fact, I think the only snap of under center that we saw last week against the Saints was the failed tush push. So is that Nick Sirianni's decision, or is that Jalen Hurts doesn't like under center? But I tell you what, I think under center, when you have a good offensive line and a good running game, and Kellen Moore's offenses has shown this in the past, under center can be very beneficial for getting good play action, getting your running back going downhill, then working the play action game.
By the way, the Mets have just beat the Braves in Game 1. The Mets are going to the playoffs, and they will face the Brewers. And now the Braves will need to win the second game to get into the playoffs. If they lose, they will be eliminated, and Arizona would be into the playoffs. So, by the way, the Mets would then be the 5 seed. The Diamondbacks would be the 6 seed under that scenario. I'm pretty sure that we got that right. The D-backs will clinch with the Mets Game 2 win. So if the Mets sweep this, that's what you heard in the background here at the Fanatics Sportsbook. Jeff Mosher, football at 4. All right.
You know what team scares me the most in the NL playoffs, Mike?
The Padres?
No, the Phillies. They scare me the most, honestly. I mean, listen, it's they had a great year, but they go up and they swing it, they strike out 13 to 15 times. I think we could all say, oh man, we saw that coming a mile away, right? I'm confident, but I'm sort of cautiously confident in the Phillies because there were just too many games where they just swung at awful pitches, man.
I think a lot of people feel that caution, that cautiously optimistic feeling with you there. By the way, the Mets are a team that I would not be all that interested in playing in a 5-game series.
I'm with you. Yeah. I am totally with you.
All right, Moshe, give me your take on the turnovers from Jalen Hurts. Do you look more at him, or do you throw Sirianni? Your question about the offense, and this was supposed to be definitively Kellen Moore's offense, and if we're starting to question whether it is his offense, I think that's a problem.
Yeah, it's a major problem. if that's the case, it's just I don't know exactly where the problems lie. If the offensive coordinator would like to do things but can't because
that would be a major issue. If I'm Howie Roseman and I took the initiative to keep you and then bring in a new coordinator and then you're undermining that by again hovering over the coordinator and putting your offense in, that's a big problem.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, if it's the coach or it's the quarterback, it doesn't matter. It's still problematic because the guy was brought in to do a certain job, and if he can't do it all because he's handcuffed by one, the other, or both, then it just makes for, the sort of the discombobulation that we talked about. You said, what was my biggest fear? This is like back in August, right? When we talked about what would be your biggest fear for this offense, which should be a great offense. And I said, my biggest fear would be any repeat scenario of a couple of years ago, Doug Peterson's last year, where you had Doug Peterson and Marty Mornhinweg and Andrew Briner, right? And Rich Scangarello. You had way too many voices trying to concoct the offense, and it looked like it on the field. And if you have people in this room between Nick and Kellen Moore and Jalen Hurts and the pass game coordinator, whose name is escaped by Kevin Petullo, and Jeff Stoutland, the run game, if there's too much headbutting or we don't want to do this or we don't want to do that, then it shows. And right now, the offense kind of looks bad. Now, we'll see. I mean, I'm not the whole, after 4 weeks, we know exactly what you are, right? I mean, the Eagles look pretty good offensively in week 1. But the one thing that has been constant is the turnovers. And that goes back to last year.
Yeah.
And listen, people want to make it 1,000 different excuses for why he doesn't have answers or he's staying in the pocket when he should be. You can't turn the ball over that much. I know some of them, not all of them are on Jalen Hurts, are on other people. They're not all on Jalen Hurts, but the numbers are the numbers, Mike, right? The turnovers are the turnovers, and they happen at a ridiculous rate now, and you just can't sustain that way and be victorious.
Yeah, Kemsky's, question today, he put it out there, he was averaging 0.6 turnovers a game, and now it's up to 1.4. You're almost at 2 turnovers every single game from that quarterback position. That's unsustainable, but it's really hard. I agree with what you just said. After 4 weeks, it's hard to make a judgment on who these are. And then you add in, if I tell you, Mosher, hey, I'm not playing with Smith, Brown, and Lane Johnson, And you would tell me at the beginning of the year, if that's my roster, you're saying, well, this team's not very good. Like, there wouldn't be any surprise here. So I have a hard time putting definitive judgments on what the offense is or isn't. But what it is, if Sirianni's offense is, and it's not Kellen Moore's offense, then I got problems with that. But right now through 4 games, I can't really judge what this offense is or isn't with so many key guys really being in and out of the lineup. I mean, yesterday you had Landon Dickerson playing center at one point of the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair. I mean, some of it's fair, some of it's questionable. You know, why were so many guys in and out of that game? Because it was really hot and humid. Well, you know, we talked about this on the pod last week. It's definitely a home field advantage for the Dolphins and the Buccaneers, to some extent the Jags, in the September and October games, early October. It's absolutely a home field advantage, but it's not one that teams don't know about, and it's not one that you can't prepare for by either getting overly hydrated during the game. We all remember the pickle juice game that seemed to work well. Where is the sort of, I can understand a couple of guys even with cramps, but I mean, I don't know if you saw the replay on TV when I guess a referee went up and tapped Jalen Carter to see if he was okay, and he fell over, right? Like,
yes.
Where is the team-wide preparation there for that kind of heat and humidity that you have to know to expect? To me, that's a little fishy that they had that many guys. And then also, Mike, to your point, and I'll cherry pick one example, but there are definitely others. 2 weeks ago, the 49ers played the Rams. They didn't have Kittle, they didn't have Debo, and they didn't have Christian McCaffrey. They didn't win the game, but they scored 24 points. Brock Purdy threw for almost 300 yards and 3 touchdowns to Juwan Jennings. So we can say let's not judge this offense without its firepower, fine, but it's got to be an indictment on one or someone or many people offensively if you are completely inept without, well, like if you can't do anything.
Yep.
When you still have a great offensive line, you still have Dallas Goedert, you still have Saquon Barkley, and you traded for a guy who was a first-round pick. Now, maybe he's not that talent. Maybe that's an indictment on the GM giving up a third-round pick for. I have no problem having that discussion because I got killed when I said it when the trade happened. But it looks pretty realistic right now.
Well, and there's a lot there. There's a lot there. By the way, the offensive line, Fred Johnson had a rough day at the office yesterday. So the offensive line, you know, you give up 6 sacks in the game. Is that the line? Is that Hurts? I mean, there's so much.
Yeah, and by the way, this Bucs defense, by all metrics,
they had 2 sacks entering the game. They had 2 sacks entering the game yesterday.
Right. The Eagles make the Bucs look like they are the 85 Bears every time they play them, but they're not that great of a defense. So I know all the weapons weren't there, but the Bucs also didn't have Antoine Winfield and Kalijah Kancey. So you have to be able to function as an offense if you're that good. And in totality, their offense stunk on ice.
Yep.
By
And listen,
the way, it's okay to run on first down. Just to let everybody want to know there. You can run the ball on first down.
You can run the ball on first down. And by the way, he's your best weapon. And you're saying, look, we're down 7-0. We went 3 and out. Then we're down 14-0. He said today, we were down 21-0. We only ran 6 plays. Well, some of that's on the fact that you couldn't move the damn sticks, you know?
Right.
Exactly. But I will say, they did kind of get back in that game with that 2-point conversion. The 2 points that they got, it was a 3-point swing. It made it a 2-possession game, and you drove. They had 16 points with a chance to score some more points, even with the losses, and that turnover just completely squashed any shot you had.
Killed them. Absolutely killed them. Because then you look, what was it, 30-16, right, like you said, and then you have a chance to make it a one-possession game. Now you still have to stop the Bucs. So I don't know how confident anybody would have felt, but at least you're in the game and you got momentum. That was a killer turnover.
It was a killer turnover at a killer time in the game where your team, you know, offensively, you finally got a good drive together and had a chance to get some points on the board. Couldn't get it done. They do have the bye week here. Obviously, we'll get into that later on in the week and next week as they get ready for a Cleveland team here. But they got questions on defense, and that's where I say yesterday, if I'm pointing the finger at somebody, it's got to be Fangio in that defense, and thinking to myself, look, this is a team, Moshe, in Tampa Bay that scored 6 points at home the week before against Denver, and you got worked on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, you played scared. Honestly, they played scared. They lined up 8, 9, 10 yards of cushion, and when you play scared, in an opponent's house, they seize on that really quickly. And you saw the Bucs immediately went to work. The first play of the game was an 8-yard pass, right? A really quick 8-yard comeback because Darius Slay was playing 10 yards off of either Evans or Godwin. I forget. Or no, it was 10. It was the Palmer kid, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, they set the tone from the start.
Well, it's that. And listen, we talk a lot about, they're shorthanded yesterday. You go look at Olamide Zaccheaus is down in Washington helping them, their offense. He had a productive day. You have a practice squad group of receivers, and I get it. They're your top guys. But Sterling Shepard, where'd they find him? Right? Off the practice squad yesterday, and he's making key catches to keep the sticks moving in that game. So you've got to do a better job of, when you're down some guys, at least being competent. That pass game yesterday was completely incompetent, but there's so much more to dive into on that. And I know the Inside the Birds podcast has a lot more on it, and will continue this week. We'll look at it more on Football at 4. Jeff Mosher here on the Football at 4 Sports Bash Monday edition on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Moshe, we'll catch up with you Wednesday, man.
All right, Mike, take care.
There's Football at 4 with Jeff Mosher. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. This hour of the Sports Bash, it's brought to you by Jersey Cow, a great place for the family to hang out and eat ice cream. Going to need a little ice cream after watching those Eagles this weekend. A little something to feel good. And you can do that in Northfield and Brigantine locations. They're open every day from noon till 10, year-round. Ice cream is a year-round thing at Jersey Cow. When we come back, Knicks Nuggets. Nick Earnshaw's here. Now we know the Mets are in. And now the Mets are a possible opponent for the Phillies. They just beat that was a wild game.
I have a stat for you after the break here. A little number from this Braves-Mets game.
It was an awesome game. And by the way, the atmosphere at the Fanatic Sportsbook for that was great. I mean,
this is why you come
erupted.
here. This is why you come here to this sportsbook.
It was awesome. Mets win. They're in the playoffs. Now Chris Sale has to pitch Game 2 for the Braves just to try to get them into the playoffs, which means he will not be available if they make the playoffs. And if the Braves win, the Diamondbacks are out.
So Major League Baseball, too, said to both these teams, do not celebrate in between these games. No champagne, nothing. Are you going to abide by that if you're a player for the Mets after this triumph?
What's their lineup look like? Frank the Tank playing first?
I think so.
When we come back, Knicks Nuggets here on the Sports Bash live from the Fanatic Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar Booking Games at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City.
You're listening.
Stop. Before you consider taking drastic measures to lose weight, like GLP-1 injections, consider Golo. Golo's release is easier than injections and fad diets. No need to jump through insurance hoops. It's simple. You take one release supplement with each meal. Golo's release supplement contains 7 natural plants and 3 key minerals that target body fat and combat the stress of dieting. With Golo, you follow the Golo for Life plan, where you'll safely and effectively control sugar cravings and hunger while minimizing muscle loss, allowing you to feel good and inspired to reach your goal weight. With Golo, you get an effective and affordable weight loss solution that's clinically proven, because controlling glucose, maintaining healthy insulin levels, and saying goodbye to starvation dieting is the secret to lasting weight loss and wellness. Visit Golo.com to get started today. That's Golo.com. Go to Golo.com to join the 5 million people who have switched to Golo as a better way to lose weight. Visit GOLO.com today.
With Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
All right, Sports Bash 4:30. Knicks Nuggets are on the way. Nick Earnshaw is here. The Braves have scratched Chris Sale. And he will not pitch, I guess. What, Game 2? He's not pitching, you said?
That is correct. Back spasms.
I wouldn't have pitched him anyway if I'm the Braves. I probably would have held on to him until the end, like if I needed him to close or something. But I probably wouldn't have tried to. I don't think I would have pitched him in this game. The Mets have no interest in winning this game.
So,
go ahead.
You believe that Sale maybe dropped a baseball and just went to go pick it up and felt something in his back just now?
I don't know. I don't even see that he's not pitching. I'm just going off of what you told me. Is that I don't even see it anywhere.
No, that is accurate.
Okay,
yeah,
just making sure. All right, Nick's Nuggets are here. Nick Earnshaw, and he's brought to you by the Fanatic Sportsbook, where we are today live. The place is packed. A lot of Mets fans here today, Nicky Earnshaw. We do know that the Mets are now in the playoffs. The Braves still need to win a game to get into the playoffs, and the Phillies will play Saturday against an undetermined opponent. And we'll have that game for you Saturday and Sunday. We'll have the Phillies and the playoffs right here on 97.3 ESPN. But there is Nick Earnshaw. By the way, Peachy has a quick stat he wants to give us.
I got a number for everybody out there. 2 hours and 58 minutes. That's how long that game just took. That's the pitch clock era. Right
there were 7 games this year.
It's a beautiful thing.
There were 7 games this year that went over 3 hours. 7. That's it.
So all that happened in under 3 hours.
Unbelievable. 8-7. What a game. Playoff baseball, Nicky Earnshaw.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Gotta love it. And listen, Pete is right. He is scratched, according to Mark Bowman, MLB.com. He was going to pitch. Now he's not going to pitch. Chris Sale is not pitching because of the back spasms. That's huge. Now, I wonder, nugget number one, because I wanted to talk about today and kind of the Cy Young, does this mean that this could sway voters to Zach Wheeler? Because Zach Wheeler's right behind Chris Sale in the Cy Young odds right now, plus 300, depending on where you look. I mean, he hasn't pitched up since September 19th. You think him not pitching in a pivotal game to go to the postseason could sway voters to Zach Wheeler because he's had the longevity throughout the entirety of the year?
We talked about this on, last week's show. Josh was, bringing up the fact that why isn't Wheeler getting more love as a candidate? And I said, I just feel like the whole Cy Young thing in the National League, there's just not like a high profile, starting pitchers just aren't as high profile as they used to be. I think Sale was every bit as deserving, but I think your point is a good one here. The fact that he hasn't pitched a lot late, and Wheeler has been on a heater the last month in the biggest games, although the Phillies did not win the game that he pitched on Saturday.
11 strikeouts, though.
He had a big game, but they did not get the win in that game. How much is wins? I think he still leads in the win category, but getting 17, I think, would have helped him. I definitely think that this strengthens Wheeler's chance for getting it. I don't think Sale... to me, if Sale would have won it, I wouldn't have said, oh, my God. Like, a couple of years ago, they were pretty adamant about this on the broadcast Saturday, that they thought Wheeler should have got it over Corbin Burns a couple of years ago. This one I don't think is as definitive, and McCarthy brought that up on Saturday, too, that if Sale won, that he would have been more deserving than Burns was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think so, too. Burns, it was a good year by him the other year. Now he's won it twice. I think, but Wheeler's been so good. Like, how much stock are you going to put into, remember, it's the NL Cy Young Award. It's not for the full entire league, right? There's 2 Cy Youngs, AL and NL. He's first in almost every category. The Phillies put out his resume the other day, essentially giving his case for the Cy Young Award. Listen, Chris Sale has been fantastic this year, and he came out of nowhere because he kind of fell apart in Boston. He thought he was getting older. He was kind of done. This year he comes out, has a massive year, especially with all the injuries with the Braves. He's been really good. But Wheeler, the fact he doesn't have a Cy Young yet, and he's been this good over this amount of time, maybe you do give it to him because he has all these great numbers against the NL.
Yeah, Sale has not pitched since September the 19th.
Yep.
So it's been a little while. So he has not had pennant race starts to help his resume where Wheeler has.
Yeah, and Wheeler's been really good in those starts. That's the thing, the longevity. He hasn't been hurt this year at all. He's been very good, consistent overall, and his numbers back it up too. And he has never won it before. Do you think that could probably play a role in the voters' minds heading forward into the Cy Young voting? But I don't know, Sale, with him missing these key starts down the stretch, it could hurt him.
It could, no doubt about it. Again, having that big of a layoff, no question. And the fact that, now Wheeler, if he would have won that game on Saturday, I know the win-loss thing is not, he pitched really well. I think I saw a stat that he pitched 6 innings or more with 2 runs or less in 4 straight games down the stretch here. Those are kind of things that you're looking at. Now, the Phillies, being the team that wins the division, too, you would think that sometimes that should play a factor in the whole thing. Generally, with these individual awards, we've seen MVPs, Ohtani, Trout be on last place teams. So I don't know that really factors in as much. But Sale, 18-3, that's number one. 2.38 ERA, that's number one. 225 strikeouts, that's number one. So Sale does have a pretty good resume.
Yeah,
you could say,
looking at Wheeler's numbers, he's got a 0.96 WHIP, first in the NL, a .192 batting average against the NL. Opponent batting average is a .192. Like, I mean, the numbers are there, so you could just go back and forth between these two essentially.
Right, so yeah, but if the numbers are so similar, what is the difference maker?
You might say that that's a positive for Sale, is that he's number one in wins and in strikeouts, and he still hasn't pitched since September 19th.
That's true. That's what I mean, though. Like, you could go back and forth these numbers. Wins, I'm not going to give the wins the stat as much love as you might want to, especially nowadays with all the advanced stats that they do have. I don't know. I think it's closer than we think, because I'm looking at some of the numbers. The odds for Wheeler are plus 300. I think it should be a little closer than that with Sale. I know Sale's been unbelievable this year, but him missing these last few starts, I think maybe the needle moves a little bit for him not starting today.
By the way, speaking of numbers, I looked at the end of game one. The Braves were minus 440 on the money line. They're now minus 298 on the money line. That thing took a jump when Sale got moved. Grant Holmes is starting. The Mets have not announced their game 2 starter yet.
Oh, man.
You know who it is? I saw online it was going to be Henry Rogartner from Rookie of the Year.
Henry Rogartner, throw him out there? That'd be great.
I mean, the Mets right now, do you just pitch position players every inning, give everybody a shot?
Nah, you got to knock the Braves out. If you're the Mets, like, I would want to knock my division rival out. I know you got to prepare for the playoffs, and you might go bullpen game.
Those days are over, though. Those days are over.
I think you're right. There's too much at stake to just...
Yeah, those days are over. The big picture means so much more than, hey, we knocked you out. Now we can't pitch anybody. We've got to get to the playoff. That's the mentality. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I think those days are over where we hate you so much that we're going to knock you out. They're not pitching anybody in this game of any substance.
Especially when you have Darius Slay dapping up the other guys sometimes on the Eagles side of things.
What are you talking about, Slay?
No, the competition just isn't there nowadays with these players.
Yeah, these players, yeah. Stott, by the way, Diaz pitched in the game today, 2 innings, right?
Yeah.
So even if they make the playoffs and they have to play tomorrow, now they're in the playoffs. If they need Diaz tomorrow, is he even available? That's what I'm saying. You're at the point now where you can't use anybody that may prevent them from being available in tomorrow's game.
It's unfortunate because I love beating up on your rivals and sending them home. I mean, there's an ego part of me that I want to do it. You know,
absolutely. Now Pete G said Major League Baseball told the Mets or whoever won Game 1 that they could not celebrate in the locker room between the games. Do you think the Mets are abiding, or are they?
No chance.
You think they're having a couple pops?
Absolutely.
Wow.
I'm getting ready. Yeah, I'm with Pete on this.
Wouldn't you?
Well, I mean, if I'm not in the lineup.
So if you're not in the lineup, then you can have that.
We'll put it this way. I'm imagining there's a lot of Mets in this second game.
Lindor just won the game.
Yep.
He's probably not playing in game 2.
I imagine there's a lot of Mets in this game that are having a sneaker day instead of a spike day.
Yes.
I think a lot of them are wearing sneakers for game 2 here today. Although, keep in mind, somebody has to play. I mean, you got a 26-man roster, so there's guys who have to, starters that have to play in this game. You can't just call up a bunch of guys from
AAA,
Port St. Lucie.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you can't. I mean, but you have, how can you not, after that game, after the way they won, Mike, how do you not celebrate? You got to celebrate after that. They would not feel if they lose the second game, are the vibes and the energy going to be as high as after winning a game like that?
Listen,
I would say the heck with Rob Manfred.
The Mets have no interest in winning. By the way, I wouldn't even want to win the game because I don't want to go to San Diego if I don't have to.
It's true. That's true. You don't want to play the Padres.
No, I mean, forget I would much rather go to Milwaukee. I don't want to have to go to the West Coast and play, and I think the Padres are a tougher out. The whole thing is much better by being, and this is why I think a lot of people, this was a big conversation over the weekend. You know, the Phillies didn't seem all that interested. They kind of took their foot off the gas. I think they thought it was a better path from the 2 seed than the 1 seed.
Yeah, I think so. I think it could be the better path. You're going to probably have to play the Dodgers anyway. You get out of that DS. I mean, that's the path you're going to have. And could you imagine now? Remember 2008? They played the Brewers in the DS. Then they played the Dodgers in the NLCS. I mean, we could be seeing something along the similar lines here. Could you imagine that?
True. All right, what else we got?
All right, nugget number 2. I want to stick with baseball here and kind of looking at the overarching theme, Mike, of the third wild card. It's in its third year of existence. We talked a little bit about this on the Shift baseball podcast I host. We talked about this. Is the third wild card a success for Major League Baseball? And do you enjoy having that third team? Because if you look at the past 2 years, the Phillies, Diamondbacks, 2 NL teams have made it to the World Series. I think it's been a massive success, and I think it was the best decision, one of the best decisions baseball has made, adding that third wild card.
See, I don't like it for a couple of reasons. One, I don't like the fact that these teams that are getting – the playoffs should start for everybody at the same time. In baseball, you can't have your 2 best teams taking a week off. That's not conducive to getting – and this is part of the problem is – yeah, you're saying the 6 seeds are getting in, but that's not what baseball should want. You shouldn't want your 6 seeds making it to the finals. You should want your best teams representing your league in the championship round, but a lot of it could be because the best teams are getting a week off. So I think adding that third team has made the 2 teams getting byes, putting them at somewhat of a disadvantage, and it's not the best representation of your sport. To have Texas playing Arizona, baseball didn't want that. Baseball doesn't want that.
No, they don't want that. But I think as a fan and consumer, getting these teams in, it shows that they're deserving to be in. I mean, like showing that the third team is deserving to be in. And remember, there are only 12 teams that make it to the postseason. And like other leagues, 14 teams make it. 16 teams make it in the NBA. Baseball's the longest season and not as many teams make the postseason. I think it's fair that you're adding that third wild card team into the postseason and having a 12-team playoff with the 6 on each side. I think we're kind of going along with the other leagues. I'd
actually be better if you added some extra teams so that the 2 teams aren't sitting a week off and going 1 versus 8. So you want
7. You want to add another one.
If you're going to go that far, just so that the 2 teams don't have to sit for a week. I think you go 1 versus 8, 2 versus 6, and do it that way.
And still have best of 3s.
Yeah, best of 3s. I hate it, the 1 game thing. That I hate it. So do a best of 3 and start it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then everybody comes back and plays Saturday. So everyone's on the same playing field. Now you would say you should be rewarded for being the number 1 seed. Yeah, but guess what? That's not a reward. These teams are telling you it's not a reward to sit out for a week. They're saying it's a disadvantage for us. The Braves openly came out and said that we think it's a disadvantage that we had to sit out for the last 2 seasons. So these teams don't want to be rewarded by sitting out a week. So add another team and expand it. If you're already sold out and jumped the shark by adding 7 teams, why not make it 8, 1, 8, 2, 7, 3, 6, 4, 5, and get on with it?
You could. I mean, I wouldn't mind having more playoff teams, but I think having the 6, it's better than it was and having only a couple teams in the postseason at 5. I'm glad they expanded it. The week thing's interesting to me because I feel like some years it could be different, right? Like you're going to complain that you didn't have enough time off, or you complain. Like there's always going to be something to complain about. If you're one of the best teams, you get a week off. So it's a long season. I mean, you should want those couple of days off. I know the momentum thing. I get it. But like if the Phillies sweep the first round, I mean, are they really going to be complaining about having that week off? Like, I think it just depends on the team. It's just a little bit of an excuse. I think it's a little bit of an excuse for some
I
of these
don't think
teams.
it's an excuse for many reasons. One, if you play baseball, you don't want to sit out for a week. There's no baseball player that says, you know what I really want? I want to sit out and get my timing knocked off. These guys do not want to sit off. The hitters do not. Now, the pitchers, that's a different story. Although Wheeler, you think Wheeler really is thrilled that he's not staying on his rotation? No, this is not an advantage for him. These guys do not. Baseball is a timing game. To sit out for 5 days is not conducive. And you have a situation where these other teams, the difference is the number 1 seed is not all that different from the number 6 seed. It's not like there's this huge gap in talent. So them being almost on the same level as you and then getting to play for 3 days while you're not, That's not an advantage for my team.
Yeah, but you don't. But then you have the opportunity of getting knocked out in that first round. That's the thing. Like you could get knocked out. And you're out of it. You know what I mean? Like that's the advantage. You're already moved on to the second round. You have a shorter path to the World Series. So having a couple days off, I get the momentum. I'm with you there. I understand that aspect of it. But if you look at it from a broader perspective, I mean, you could be knocked out in that first round. You have a shorter path to the World Series. You don't have to play as many games to get to your ultimate goal.
I get that. And that part is not, The difference is if everybody's playing on the same playing field and it's 1 versus 8, the 1 seeds thing is I'm playing the worst team that's in the playoffs. Now, that doesn't guarantee that you're moving on, but what it does guarantee is that I'm at least playing games. So if I do what I'm supposed to do as the number 1 seed, I'm moving on while playing, as opposed to I'm sitting there while you're getting to play. I think if you ask anybody, they would look, it's 2 games. It's 2 games extra, 3. I mean, if you get to it, the Phillies, though, they swept the first 2 years of these playoffs. They played 2 games and swept and moved on. So it's not like, it's 2 extra games. So listen, to me, I don't know of any baseball player that's going to say, hey, do you want to sit out for 5 days and then be like, yeah, that's great. Nobody wants to sit out while the other teams are getting to play.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I wonder if they do expand down the line to 7 or 8 teams. It wouldn't shock me. It wouldn't shock me at all. But I can't wait. Mike, Pete, I mean, Red October is like right around the corner. I mean, this is fantastic. Are you guys going to any of the games? Are you getting ready to go to any of the games? Are we going to be there? I'm planning on being at one of the games this weekend. I'm just saying.
On that note, I have an email to read off to everyone out there. Entry not selected for Phillies Division Series ticket purchase opportunity. They thanked me for my chance, for my entry, but unfortunately it was not selected. But I still do have the chance for the NLCS and World Series. So there you go.
I am not planning on going to any of the games unless something changes. Maybe we'll see. I am thinking about the fact that they play Saturday and Sunday this week.
With no Eagles.
No Eagles. Now, the football, I can't go out and watch like at an establishment. But baseball, I can. I can concentrate enough on baseball.
Just like this establishment right here with these pitches.
Saturday, we already have talked about a couple options of what we're going to do for the game on Saturday. Okay? Now, this is a big topic. We'll talk more about this later on in the week. But the establishment has to have the sound on.
Yes.
So
I think it will.
Well, last year I told the story of games 2 years ago in the World Series, Game 6. Went to the establishment. They had the game on. And then they had a band at 10 o'clock, and they put the band on and took the sound off.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
So you got
that's
some
brutal.
Bon Jovi cover songs as opposed to...
Can't have it.
Yeah.
Can't have it. So we're going to have to start establishing a list of establishments. We're going to do that this week. We got to get a list of establishments that are going to have the game with the sound on. That is essential for watching these games.
Yes. So I'm the opposite of you. I would rather watch baseball by myself, alone. And I like going to the game too. I either got to be there or I want to watch it alone in the comfort of my own home. Football, I can watch out at an establishment. That's what I can do. I could watch football more so than baseball.
Football I need, I'm there with the notepad. I got to remember stuff. There's key moments in a game. And if I'm out and people are talking to you, you kind of get lost. Baseball, you can kind of focus
It's hard on it. There's so much riding on every single pitch.
Yeah.
Just in this Mets-Braves game, it's every pitch.
Yeah, but you know what? There's enough time between the pitches that you can. But that's the thing with baseball. You're watching it with other people out. You're talking. What are you throwing here? Is you going curveball, go fastball up? You got to lay a bunt down. You got to do a hit. You're into the game as you're watching it with other people.
No, I don't want to watch it with anyone. That's the problem. I want to watch it maybe one or two other people.
Baseball, you got to have someone to bounce ideas off of.
No, I want to watch in my own comfort, in my own home, or I'm at the game. One or the other. Red October at the game, or I want to be locked in, silence around me, having a pizza, having some flats, and I'm good.
Flats. I made wings last night for the Sunday night game. All drums. All drums.
Oh, jeez.
All drums.
Oh, I can't wait till I win this bet at the end of the postseason, Mike. Hopefully it's the case.
All right. Grant Holmes, by the way, is on the mound for the Braves. He is getting the start for Atlanta.
He's got a great curly hair going, man.
And that's today's Knicks Nuggets. All right, Nick Earnshaw. Thanks, man.
All right, Mike. See you, Pete.
Knicks Nuggets are brought to you by the Fanatics Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar, Book, and Games at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. This hour of the Sports Bash, it was brought to you by our friends at Jersey Cow. A great place for the family to hang out, have some ice cream. Jersey Cow. Everything is homemade, small batch, right here in South Jersey with only the best ingredients. Enjoy Jersey Cow in Northfield and now in Brigantine. They got fall flavors beginning, bringing back some popular classics while introducing some future favorites as well. The best ice cream is at Jersey Cow. Northfield, Brigantine, open every day from noon to 10. Ice cream is a year-round thing at Jersey Cow. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. That Mets-Braves game is underway. We'll keep you up to date on that. The Mets won Game 1. They are in the playoffs. The Braves now, they need to win to get in. If they lose, the Mets will be the 5 seed. And the Diamondbacks would be in, and they would be the 6th seed. Coming up next, Sal Paolantonio. You saw him in Tampa yesterday. What did he see from that Eagles team walking off the field? That's next.
This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Mike Gill.
I think it's early, and I think there's a lot of teams' stories unwritten right yet. I don't think, again, you have some things that you have some base things that you think that you do well, but to say, we know what our identity is. I think that's just we're going to figure out what we do well. We're going to try to continue to do that, see what we don't do well, try to get out of that, and then try to mesh some of the things together.
That was Nick Sirianni after the Eagles loss in Tampa. 5 o'clock hour on the Sports Bash live at the Fanatics Sportsbook Gallery Bar, Book, and Games in Atlantic City. Sal Paolantonio, ESPN's national NFL correspondent, was in Tampa as the Eagles walked off the field. Do they have an identity? Does he know who they are? Has he seen enough to give a assertion of what this Eagles team is? And he joins us now here on a Monday edition of the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Sal Pal, you were in the heat down there, and there's a lot of heat going around up here now about the way that game turned out yesterday.
Oh, boy, Michael, there's so much to unpack with this football team right now. And, it's really in 3 parts. What went wrong yesterday? Why did it go wrong? That's part 1. Part 2 is what has to be fixed. And part 3 is can it be fixed? I'm listening to Nick Sirianni. That soundbite that you played was from today, correct?
After yesterday's game, because I will update that by saying he said the identity is accountability and toughness. So yesterday he said we don't really have one. Today he said our identity is accountability and toughness.
Yeah, so he said 2 things yesterday that shocked me after the game. One was that, they're going to go back to fundamentals and everything is on the table. And today he changed the message and said we're going to try to figure out what we do well and what we don't do well and try to fix what we don't do well. And accountability is our identity. Well, those are a lot of different messages, Mike. They really are.
Yes,
and
indeed.
I'm not sure which direction this football team is going in right now. So to me, that's the pessimistic view. But if you want to take the optimistic view, and let's do that for a second. Going into the bye, the anticipation was they weren't going to go 4-0, that they might have a chance to be 3-1. They had to go to Brazil, not an easy trip. They have injuries to major players on offense. That's never easy. Their quarterback continues to put them in sad situations, bad situations, horrible situations with these turnovers.
So to be 2-2, despite all of that, is not a bad thing going into the bye, because you do have Browns at home, and then you have the Giants right on the road, correct?
Browns, Giants, yep.
Yeah, stay with me here, Mike. Stay with me, buddy. They got the Browns, and then they got the Giants. So you can be 4-2 pretty easily.
Yeah, their upcoming schedule after the bye, they do have a stretch of very winnable games.
Right, but so they're 2-2, but they have to fix the number one thing to me is they have to fix this defense that, decides to sometimes turn it on and then turn it off. They were very good against New Orleans, and what they did in the first quarter, that no-show yesterday, has to be addressed. It has to be addressed first from scheme. You cannot play off the ball in the secondary if you're not getting any pass rush with your down linemen. You need to get some kind of coverage that presses these wide receivers and doesn't give them a free release to allow your pass rush to get to the quarterback.
Yeah.
That to me is fundamental football. When you're playing backyard football, you're playing press coverage because you're going 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, and then you rush the passer. This is fundamental 101 football. It's not tough to figure out. You don't have a good enough pass rush with your 4 down linemen winning against the offensive line. Your edge rushers are weak. They had their first 2 sacks yesterday in Game 4. Jalen Carter was struggling mightily through the heat in that game yesterday. But you're playing off the ball. And I was doing the call on ESPN radio yesterday with Steve Levy. He had the play-by-play, and I was on the national radio color analyst broadcast. And I kept saying, man, oh, man, they are allowing Baker Mayfield to drop back, put his right foot in the ground, and throw it to his first read over and over and over again, Mike.
Yes.
It was really, really infuriating, frankly.
Well, and I know since you were there, you talk about the heat, you had multiple guys leave with cramps. You had multiple guys look like they were spent, and they could not get off the field, and it didn't help that the offense couldn't move the stick. So was fatigue and heat a big issue in this game?
It was for the Eagles. I was standing outside the Bucs locker room prior to the game doing my taped tunnel hit for Sunday NFL Countdown. Baker Mayfield comes off the field at about 12:20. He's in helmet. He's in pads. He's in his full uniform. He had just warmed up. I said hello to him, and I said, how is it out there? He goes, nice and toasty for him.
It's
That's
something
what he said.
By the way, Sal, and Sal Palantonio's with us, it's something Brady brought up on the Fox broadcast yesterday, too, which was how hot it is and the advantage that they have early in the season as opposed to when he played in New England. He said later in the year you would get the Northeast gets the advantage. He said, but early in the year we feel like we had an advantage down because of that heat. They kept showing on the broadcast yesterday that it felt like 106 on the field. You were down on that field. Did it feel as hot as they were kind of, letting us know?
100%.
Yeah.
I had a towel around my shoulders to try to dampen the sweat, and I was just standing there. I needed a towel to go on TV to get the sweat off my brow and my forehead, and I was just standing there doing television. I wasn't playing football.
Right.
But, Brady kills me because for years and years and years, the Patriots would always play the Dolphins in Miami in December because the New England Patriots would successfully lobby to have trips down there in December and not in September. And, when they played down there in the hot weather, the Patriots could never beat the Dolphins. So that's nothing new. That's been around for years. And it always seems like the Eagles play the Bucs in September. When Deshaun Jackson goes for 75 yards in that touchdown against the Eagles, it was in September.
Well, they did go down there in week 3 last year and did win a game, which is the first time that they're 1-6.
That was at night. Wasn't that game at night?
I think it was. Yes, I think it was a
Yeah,
night
I think
game.
it was night. Don't count the night games. It's different daytime than night.
Yeah. No, well,
It's
just
different
pointing
daytime
out.
than night. But you know what? That's not a good excuse. You have to be prepared, first of all. Now, let's go back to what you said, because what you said is very, very important, and people need to talk about this. So the Bucks march down the opening drive, get 7. The Eagles are 3 and out. The Bucks march down and they get 7 more. It's 14-0. Now, and I said this in the booth with Steve Levy, you have to run the ball.
Mm-hmm.
You can't put your defense back out on the field. I don't care if you don't get a first down or not. You simply must take time off the clock. And the Eagles did not do that. Kellen Moore did not do that. And this is a fundamental problem with the team. The defensive coach is coaching the defense, and the offensive coach is coaching the offense, and the team is not being coached from a central figure that says, you know what, we need to run the ball here so my defense can get some time on the bench.
Right.
Because the Bucks had 186 yards to none for the Eagles, and they were up 24-0, and the time of possession was so lopsided, and there's a reason why those players were gassed on defense. It was totally ridiculous that they did not run the ball in the first quarter.
Right, because you're 3 and out, and then you're 3 and out again. You basically, Sirianni brought up today, he said, we were down 21-0. We had run 6 plays. So, well, whose fault is that? You couldn't move the chains. You're trying to throw the ball. And so the offense,
That doesn't matter. When it's go back to 14-0.
Yep.
Your defense has been on the field now and gotten railroaded twice, boat raced twice. Give them a breather.
Yes.
It's going to be a long game. Give them a breather, run the ball, and let them. I'll tell you, there's a very, very, very famous incident when Buddy Ryan punched Kevin Gilbride on the sideline because Kevin Gilbride would not run the football, and the defense of the Houston Oilers had to go back on the field. Don't you remember that?
Absolutely, I remember that, yes.
That's what that punching incident was about. It wasn't because Buddy Ryan, didn't like Kevin Gilbride. It's because Buddy Ryan didn't want his defense to go back on the field, and Gilbride kept throwing the football.
Great insight from Sal Paolantonio. Now, Sal, they come out, by the way, they kind of got back in the game, amazingly enough. It's 3rd down, and they're on the 19-yard line, and Hurts fumbles the football. The Eagles have won the turnover battle 4 times in the last 22 games. That turnover there, you're calling the game for the national radio broadcast. How deflating did that feel?
Okay, so we're talking about the fumble. Right?
They're on the Tampa 19.
Lavonte David blitzes through the A-gap, correct?
Yep, and he sidesteps him. Davis.
No. I'll tell you what happened. I've watched that play 5 times.
All right.
Lavonte David blitzes through the A-gap. Saquon Barkley picked him up and blocked him past Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts takes one little sidestep and then one little half step forward, but still holds the ball. And David has time to regather himself and come from the backside and sack Jalen Hurts. So Jalen Hurts, and Brady talked about it in the broadcast too, and so did I. He did not have the awareness, the situational awareness in the pocket that David was still alive.
Yeah.
The play was alive. And the clock in his head should have gone off that said, God, please throw the football. Get rid of it, whatever you have to do. Don't get strip sacked by a guy who's going to the Hall of Fame and then is having a game that's out of his mind. Because Lavonte David had his best game ever as a pro yesterday, statistically.
And Sal, you know this. They had 2 sacks as a team coming in. How many sacks did they have yesterday? 6?
6.
Yeah.
And, Mike, when I was on with you Friday, we talked about Jalen Hurts, snap to release, time to throw the football, is the slowest in the NFL and the slowest of his career. It's now slower than it was before he took the field in Tampa. It was 3.17 seconds. It's now 3.29. That's the slowest in the league, snap to release, slowest of his career. So, and it was a very deflating. Obviously, they had a shot. What was it? It was 24-10. And then after the blocked extra point, they were down by 16. It was then a two-score game,
Two-score game, yep, 30-16.
Right? So they had a chance twice to get back in the game, and both times were squandered by the quarterback. And that's what Jalen was talking about yesterday at the podium after the game, where he said, I have to do a better job. My defense put me in a position. We had opportunities, and we didn't take advantage of them. Oh, yeah. I mean, and the other thing, too, is, we were talking about this on Friday, you and me on your show, where people have started saying, it's okay for Jalen to have these interceptions. It's okay for Jalen to have these turnovers because he's being aggressive and blah, blah, blah. No, Mike, but that narrative is so false. It's ridiculous. It really is.
Yeah, no, listen, the fumble in the third, it's his 27th turnover in the last 2 years. That's the most in the NFL, and it's 9 straight games going back to last year. So it's just perpetual. And that begs to the question, he says something, do you and Sirianni talk after the game about it? He says, we have our moments. Does it feel like there's a disconnect between those two?
Okay, Mike. You and I are friends, right? We're not even the quarterback and the coach of the team. If I said to your producer, Josh, yeah, me and Mike, we have our moments.
Right.
Mike, that would be the dictionary definition of a disconnect.
Exactly. Well, and it seems that Sirianni goes out of his way to cover up for the quarterback. And the quarterback doesn't really reciprocate all that much.
Absolutely not. Yeah. We have our moments.
Right.
What the heck? I mean, even if it's true, never say it publicly.
Exactly.
Say publicly, yeah, absolutely. We talk. We definitely talk. We go over everything. Me and the coaches, all the coaches, we go through everything.
So, Sal Paolantonio, after that game, you see that team walking off the field. Do you get a sense of frustration of that team that doesn't have answers? Do they look like a team that doesn't have the answers to what's next?
That's hard to say. So we're going to find out when they play the Browns. But we really won't know the answer to that question. I want to be fair here. I think it's important to be fair.
Well, it's hard to make a judgment on their offense without Brown, Smith, and Lane. I thought Fred Johnson had a rough day.
Yep. Yeah. He had a rough day. And then, of course, the center went out, and the right guard had to slide over to the center position. The left guard. So left guard had to slide over. So, because I think Bowles blitzed basically from St. Petersburg. I mean, he was just coming out of the sky with different kinds of blitzes. They were multifaceted. He was hiding them. He was disguising them. He was dropping guys into coverage. He was overloading blitzes. And I don't think Levante David was being coached. I honestly don't. I just think he was like, okay, my instinct says jump the A-gap here and just blow this situation up. I think he was just out there doing his thing like he was Allen Iverson.
By the way, Hurts was pressured on 15 of 37 dropbacks yesterday. Yes, they were getting pressure all over. And by the way, there were a few chances the Eagles had in the red zone, and I kept asking myself, you're running the ball right at Vea. Like, try the other way, man. Why do you keep running at 50?
Yeah, he's hard to miss, Vita Vea.
They did it back-to-back plays in the red zone there. You ran right at him, head-scratching stuff there. By the way, does this offense, in your mind, look like Kellen Moore's, or does it seem like that maybe there's a disconnect there, too?
I think it's Kellen Moore's. I think he has total responsibility for the design and the play calling here. I really do. Just watching Sirianni on the sideline, I don't see him having much input. Jalen Hurts goes back to the bench.
Okay.
He sits next to Doug Nussmeier, the quarterback coach, or next to Kellen Moore, and they look at the Microsoft tablet
Yep.
And they go through the plays, and Sirianni has got his back to them and is looking at the field. So I don't really see Sirianni having much input on anything. Mm-hmm. So you asked me this question, and honestly, Mike, it's the most important question. Can it be fixed? Do they have the answers? And so I started my answer by saying they're professionals. They get paid a lot of money. This is what they do for a living, and they have to figure it out. It's good that week 5 is the bye because you want to get Smith, Brown, and Lane Johnson back, but it's also bad because, you shouldn't have to reconfigure your football team after 4 weeks.
I definitely, and by the way, obviously the head coach gets a lot of heat. You're the head coach, but I'll see if you agree. I'm more disappointed with the defensive coordinator with that effort yesterday because I don't know that the head coach has a lot of input on the defensive game plan.
You're totally right. Vic Fangio has complete autonomy over the defense, and he has total responsibility for the A, poor tackling, B, poor design, C, poor execution. Absolutely.
ESPN Next Gen Stats, 16 missed tackles in the game yesterday by the Philadelphia Eagles. By the way, Baker Mayfield had been sacked 12 times in the previous 2 games. The Eagles got to him twice. One, early in the game was kind of inconsequential, but they had 20 first downs he accounted for, Baker Mayfield, against that defense yesterday. Made it look easy. Not as easy on the bye week here when you have to sit out and wait, but it comes at a pretty good time with all the injuries here. And Sal Paolantonio, he was in Tampa yesterday, a hot one down there, but there's going to be a lot of hot takes getting ready for the Cleveland Browns. And don't forget, Sal, you got the bye week this week, and then, of course, next week, Cleveland coming home. As you chronicled, they got a little bit of a lighten up of the schedule. Cleveland, the Giants, Cincinnati. Doug Peterson comes to town with his own problems with Jacksonville, Dallas, and then that Washington team is here as you start looking at the back half of the schedule. So you do have a little bit of a lighten up of the schedule here.
So that means I get to go down to Ocean City and see Johnny G, the Griner team, Burger Realty in Ocean City, and we'll go out to Uncle Bill's Pancakes. Is that what you're telling me? I got a little bit of a break here. Is that what you're saying?
Sounds like it. There's no Sal Powell with the Eagles this week. You getting a week off, or do you got to sit? They got to send you someplace else?
To be determined. I'm still down in Tampa, making my way back up to the Philadelphia area, and want to thank Johnny G for his support of having me on your show. Mike Gill, you're so great. I love your questions. I love this give and take. You're fantastic. And we don't have any disconnect, Michael. I promise you, we will never have any disconnect.
Well, when you're back down the shore at Uncle Bill's, I want to be a part of that next breakfast.
Yeah, we have our moments, Mike. Me and you, we got our moments.
All right, Sal. Well, safe flight back, man.
All right, brother.
Thank you as always. Sal Paolantonio, everybody, here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Now, you hear the...
What a great spot with Sal Pal.
Well, he was down there yesterday.
A lot of insight.
He was down there, and it was hot. He said he needed a towel to go on TV. It's hot down there.
And he's still down there.
Well, you're down in Tampa. You
Good for him.
Take advantage of it.
Maybe you do go head over to Clearwater for St. Pete's.
They got a lot of cleaning up to do down there in Clearwater. The pictures have not been great,
yes.
But it looks like they're getting there. They're getting there. It wasn't as bad as it could have been, but thanks to Sal Paolantonio as always here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. A lot of takes, insight there. He brought it up too. Vic Fangio, full autonomy on the defense. So I go back to, again, you point the finger at somebody. I am extremely disappointed in Vic Fangio and that defense. Extremely disappointed in Fangio and the defense. I really thought that this guy was going to come in here and have accountability for that defense. And I'm not seeing it. Now, you'd say the head coach, he could get some accountability to some guys on that defensive side of the ball. I don't know how big, listen, I don't know how big of a voice Sirianni has with the defensive veteran play caller like that. You bring in a guy like that, it's to let him do what he wants to do. Grayson's grades are out. It's like the parent waiting for the report card, and when it comes in, they're out. Who passed? Who failed? We'll find out. Scott Grayson from Fox 29. Grayson's grades They're next, right here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
We have the perfect sitting in traffic.
You come with me.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
I got to put what I saw yesterday on Nick Sirianni more because the team was down 24-0 before you could blink. When a team starts out down 24-0, I have to put that on the head coach, especially when it's a game where you have the opportunity to avenge a loss that ended your season the year prior. And that's exactly what we had. And for them to fall as flat as they did down in Tampa yesterday afternoon, that is an indictment on Nick Sirianni above all else.
That was Chris Canty this morning on Unsportsmanlike, weekdays right here, 6 to 10 on 97.3 ESPN. It's time now for Grayson's Grades. Scott Grayson from Fox 29 and 97.3 ESPN.com grades the Eagles after every game, and it's brought to you by GMS Law. Make the right call with 4 convenient locations to serve you online at gmslaw.com. All right, Professor Grayson, that was a messy one. You and I have been doing these together for years, and that might be as ugly of a loss that you can come up with here. And when I go to the report card to the F category, I got Sirianni, I got Kellen Moore, and I got Jalen Hurts. So let's start with the 3 Fs. You did have one more F. We'll get to that later. But those 3 guys all got an F.
Yeah, look, the team did not look ready to play to me. I just, and that has to start and really end with the head coach. So, when he came out afterwards and he took the blame for it, he said, you should, blame me. But Mike, 254 total yards to nothing. The Eagles don't get a first down until late in the first half. They are down 24-0 before you blink. And it was just egregious. And, we know that it was hot. They kept talking about it on the broadcast, and I know that affects the human body. But when I was at the facility earlier this week, they were in the indoor. Doors were open. They had some fresh air blowing in there. If you know it's going to be hot, you got to get these guys ready for it one way or another. And a lot of times you'll hear about them practicing indoors and turning up the heat and, just trying to learn how to accommodate that. Now, no matter what, when your offense runs 9 plays through 3 possessions, your defense is going to be asked to be on the field a lot. So those guys were already getting tanked and tired, and I really can't blame them. But it was just it was just awful. And that was the first time in a long time that I really wanted to turn a game off. It's like I can't do that. I got to watch to grade these guys. And, to their credit, they did at least come back a little bit. But that's not enough. And it's just, that was arguably the worst performance we've seen under Sirianni, in my mind.
Wow. All right. I don't have a problem with those guys getting Fs, but if I had a switch, I would give those 3 guys a D, and I'd give Fangio the F. Why? Fangio's playing with a full deck. The offense is playing without Smith, Brown, Lane Johnson. So I can understand I went into the game thinking the offense was going to struggle. But defensively, I think I'm more disappointed with Fangio and that defense than anything else.
But
by the way, you gave Fangio a D.
I did. And this is why, for this point right here. How old is Vic Fangio? He's old.
I don't know his exact age, but
he's old.
By the way, how old's Tom Moore? How old is Tom Moore on the Buccaneers? He's 85 years old.
I know he is, walking to work and everything. Listen, Vic Fangio is too old to try to make any tackles. He had guys in position to make tackles, and there were at least 13 missed tackles in that game. This team can't tackle a tackling dummy right now. It's just awful. You walk around the league, you'll see a missed tackle here and there. But not like this. Bad angles, which you could call coaching on that. But even at that, they're in position to be able to make a play, and they don't bring these guys down. And I can't blame Vic Fangio when he can't be out there making the tackles. His job is to have the guys in position to make the plays, and they're not making the plays. Now, I will get on Vic, and I did in the grades for this. I cannot continue to watch the cushion that they are giving these guys. And again, last week I was on Sirianni because you can sense the feel of the game. It was going to be a low-scoring game. Points were going to be at a premium. This week, you could tell after one possession that the Bucs came in and spent all week trying to get the ball out of Baker Mayfield's hands quickly so that the Eagles' pass rush would not get 7 sacks on them like they gave up against Denver. So, I mean, to me, once you saw that, where's the adjustment? It has been a long time since I've seen an Eagle defender play any kind of bump and run. And what you saw, there was a play in particular where the Eagles scored the touchdown to Paris Campbell. If you remember that play, they bumped Dallas Goedert right off his route, and he was taken out of the play. And Jalen had to find somebody else, which was an improvised play, and found Campbell. But I just don't understand what happened to the art of bump and run, why whoever the Eagles have had in defensive coordinator, going back to Gannon to whatever you want to call last year and now this, that there is no bump and run trying to get guys off the timing. Because when you're getting the ball out quickly, it's all timing. And so that's where I will definitely have a beef with Vic Fangio. But he can't make the tackles. And there were tackles that could have been made, gotten off the field, and it didn't happen.
Well, listen, a D is not a great grade, by the way. You gave him a D. No. And listen, a lot of it I agree with. I was very disappointed with Vic, and I really thought that he would come in here and do a much better job. Now, listen, last week they played really well. The grades for his defense, we gave them the game ball. We said, man, they won them that game. So I don't know what to think of where this team can beat defensively, but Next Gen Stats had them missing 16 tackles yesterday. Oh. I don't know how some of the things, though, that they got to figure out. Where are you getting pass rush from? I don't know how you generate more pass rush. You don't like to blitz. You don't have guys getting to the quarterback, and you're missing a lot of tackles. This is not a recipe for a very good defense. Now,
no, and they're playing zone coverage, leaving big gaps in the zone. So they're obviously not understanding the zone and when to pass guys off. A lot of that, to me, looked like it was the linebackers that were not sinking deep enough into those zones to try to keep those holes from opening. So
I thought that Nakobe Dean had a rough day, a real rough day yesterday.
I agree. I didn't write him down specifically, but I agree.
No, but Fangio, you mentioned that you separated him differently from the defense, but I thought Fangio, to me, I thought the defense, listen, because again, I go back to, I had low expectations for them offensively because of the injuries and who was missing. You missed Brown, Smith, Lane Johnson. My expectations are low. That being said, they did, and by the way, part of this is you gave the offensive line an F. That too factors into Johnson is out. They gave up 6 sacks against a team that had 2 sacks coming in. So I can see where this is overly for hey, we're missing our key weapons on offense. Let's utilize the offensive line and try to shorten this game. They didn't do that.
No, and so here's the problem, right? Certainly the offensive line deserves some criticism. And yes, they were missing Lane Johnson. And then for part of the game, Cam Jurgens wasn't in there. So now you had Lane Dickerson shift over to center. Just a recipe for disaster. However, Jalen Hurts deserves some of the blame as well. He holds on to the ball too long. He is too late. His pocket presence right now is off. It's just not right. He's waiting too long to try to get out of the pocket. There are actually running lanes there. I remember a handful of times I saw exits out of the pocket where he could have run for 3-4 yards. And the name of the game is give me 3 to 4 yards per down, and you're going to get a first down.
Let me tell you,
you're there.
I don't know what it is, but he ran one time and just went down like a ton of bricks. And then watching him try to get up, he looked like an 80-year-old man trying to get out of bed on I don't know. He looks so clunky and just so unathletic running sometimes.
And it's so opposite of why they got to the Super Bowl in 22. It's because the RPO was so lethal. He had speed, and he would gash you if you gave him a hole. That's not there. That burst has not been there. It wasn't there last year. At times, I feel like he can get, a good 5 to maybe 10 yards, but he's also not choosing to run as much. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if that's because he's been told he can't do it or shouldn't do it. But the bottom line is, Mike, the turnovers, and he had another one yesterday. I agree with you. The offense was obviously handcuffed. But if they don't turn the ball over, one touchdown off of the muff punt, you don't blame Jalen Hurts for that. But that was a touchdown. It would have been 17 instead of 24. And then, Jalen's fumble took points off the board because they were driving. And he's had so many you go back to last season, and the not scoring points in the first quarter is just mind-boggling. Like, how can you consistently not score 1 point in the first quarter? You just have to get into field goal range. Teams do that by accident sometimes. And this team hasn't been able to score in the first quarter this season, and even going back 2 weeks into last season. It's just, this team's not in a good place right now. They have the bye, so they've got to live with this for an extra week. And Nick Sirianni, Vic Fangio, Kellen Moore, they always talk about, we do self-scouting over the bye. Well, you know what? You guys better figure something out, because this is awful, and you're going to lose the locker room because these players are going to lose confidence in you guys if they haven't already.
Scott Grayson, Fox 29, Grayson's grades after every Eagles game on 97.3 ESPN.com. Scott, I don't know how much interaction you've had with Fangio, Kellen Moore, and Nick Sirianni. They just don't sound like a trio that's having breakfast together and going over things.
It's funny you brought that up. I have not talked really to Moore or Fangio, but it's the typical Nick Sirianni that you get. Although I will say, the honeymoon's over. He's definitely getting more abrasive in press conferences. You can hear some of that and defensive. But here's my thing. You hear them talking in the offseason that it's Kellen Moore's offense. Then you hear Sirianni saying he called that 1 4th down fake tush-push play. Then you hear him talking about how he'll spend some time in the offensive meeting rooms during the week. I thought this was hands-off, dude. I thought you were hands-off of the offense. I thought you were just going to try to focus on managing the game, which, oh, by the way, you really haven't done a good job with so far. Like, stay in your lane. Let them stay in theirs. Because I don't know who's scripting the first opening possessions of these games, but that is a problem right now. They can't even get a first down. So to me, it's just it's like a dysfunctional family, to use your analogy over there. I would love to know what's going on behind the scenes, but it just seems like they have no idea. I just don't get that there's a symmetry or I don't know what you want to call it, but they're not really all on the same page right now. I mean, I'm sure he's leaving Vic Fangio alone, so that's all on Vic.
I was going to say, that's why, to me, again, I go to Fangio because I have very little thought that Sirianni has any insight or input on the defense. I think he kind of stays out of that and lets, I think that's part of, hey, we're going to hire this guy and he's going to get to run the defense. And Sirianni stays out of that. Okay. Yeah. The offensive side, the blurred lines of who's calling the plays, okay, I don't think there's a blurred line then. I think Kellen Moore's calling the plays. But I'll tell you what, I don't know that this looks like Kellen Moore's play design in offense. It looks a lot like Nick Sirianni's play design and offense with Kellen Moore maybe calling the plays.
It to me has looked more and more like Nick's as we've gone week to week to week.
Yes.
I think it's like it makes you want to pull your hair out because you're going, this is not what we were sold when they decided to keep Nick Sirianni and then hired Kellen Moore. Now, again, I know they didn't have their top two receivers, who are two of the better receivers in the entire league, but you still got to be able to move the ball a little bit, and you cannot.
To be fair, Scott, they're down.
Dallas
30
Goedert had a big drop.
They're down 30-16. They're on the 19-yard line. They are moving the ball. And Hurts fumbles.
Right.
And
that's to me, he is one of the biggest problems on that offense. In every one of their losses going back to last year.
Yeah, on a day where you're missing your two receivers, the last guy that you can have hurt you is the one guy that is a regular, and that's him. Barkley, he comes out of the half, he blasts a 50-yard run. They gave him the ball one time again after that run. So to me, if I don't have Smith and I don't have Brown, I am asking Hurts and Barkley, and Goddard, you three guys are going to be and Hurts is the one guy, you're moving the ball and he fumbles. And, I thought that play just completely squashed any shot.
Well, and that's where I go back to pocket presence and his awareness. And I just don't see a guy who's learning right now. He does not look to me like he's learning anything from one week to another. Now, and he almost had an interception as well. That was taken back because it hit the ground. But that was a bad pass, too. And I just don't see a guy who looks like he's looking at film with a coach next to him who's trying to instruct, teach, and show him in the film where there's mistakes, where he's missing open receivers potentially, when his mental clock is not engaging fast enough to get out of the pocket. I've often said that the new NFL, the first 4 weeks is preseason. Well, we just finished up the preseason, and it does not look good in terms of Jalen Hurts' progression to get ready for the now second. They're not even a quarter of the way into the season now. There's 17 games, but I don't see a guy who's making progress. I don't see a guy who's learning, and I thought that was part of the appeal with Kellen Moore coming here too. Was here's a guy that Jalen's going to have to listen to. That's going to show him some places where he can get better and improve. And I thought Kellen Moore would bring back some of the great Jalen Hurts we saw 2 years ago, and it just hasn't happened so far.
Scott Grayson's grades are up at 973ESPN.com. We went over the F's and the D's. You can check out everything else on our website, 973ESPN.com. He did give an A and a B, so go check those out over at 973ESPN.com and check him out on Fox 29. Scott Grayson, another edition of the grades. Thanks, Scott.
All right, thank you, Mike.
As always, Scott Grayson's grades are brought to you by GMS Law. Make the right call with 4 convenient locations to serve you online at gmslaw.com. And I got the Bet365 play of the day, and we've been telling you all day long who gets the credit or who gets the grief today. Who gets the credit is brought to you by South Jersey Federal Credit Union. Make the switch and bank with your only community credit union. Jersey Shore Federal Credit Union offers some of the lowest loan rates around, including refinancing. Learn more at JerseyShoreFCU.org. Well, who gets the credit from me? The credit for losing this game? I'm going Vic Fangio and that defense. That's who I'm pointing the finger at the most today. I am so disappointed in the effort of that defense yesterday. And Vic Fangio leads it. And listen, I don't blame coaches, and I'm not the big blame the coach guy, but that defense, the game plan was awful. Now, Grayson brought up an interesting point. To miss 16 tackles, you have to be in position to make that tackle. So I will look at these players and say, not good enough so far. All right, we'll wrap up the show with my Bet365 play of the day. I got a bunch of them. I'm going to make everybody some money tonight. That's next. This is the Sports Bash live at the Fanatic Sportsbook at the Gallery Bar Booking Games at Ocean Casino in Atlantic City.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
All right, get ready to get out of here. My Bet365 play of the day. I got a bunch of them tonight. By the way, this hour, 5 o'clock hour, always brought to you by Key Acura of Atlantic City. For a great car buying experience, go see Rocco at Key Acura of Atlantic City, Tilton Road in EHT. I got Tony Pollard over 2.5 receptions tonight. I got Tyler Boyd with over 23.5 yards. I got Sam Laporta over 38.5 yards.
I need Laporta tonight in fantasy.
And A-Chain over 25.5 yards rushing. There's 4 plays for you tonight.
Can you run those back? You rapid fire those.
Yeah, Pollard over 2.5 receptions. Boyd over 23.5 yards. Laporta over 38.5 yards. And A-Chain over 25.5 rushing.
I got some questions here to wrap things up. If you're ready for them. Derrick Henry, stiff arm. Are you taking one? Are you taking one of those?
Am I getting paid?
Yeah.
If I'm getting paid, yes. If not, no, I have no desire.
All right. Vikings continue.
I got what you were getting at there, Pete. I do.
Okay. Thank you.
Because, Mike, on last night, the guy was literally caught saying, "You're not stiff-arming me," when he tried to tackle Derrick Henry last night.
Oh, I didn't catch that. Sorry.
Vikings continue their winning ways. Sam Darnold, already comeback player of the year. I mean, is it wrapped up here?
I can't. I mean, unless Rodgers goes bananas, he's been very pedestrian so far.
That's my next question. Trouble in paradise for the Jets.
Yeah.
After the loss to Denver.
Yeah, because Rodgers will come out and tell you,
you stink.
Yeah, he said, I'd hold him more accountable. That's just me. I like that answer.
And finally, thoughts on Cat.
They should have never brought Salah back.
Yep.
You should have just let Rodgers start anew there. Salah was
he is a better defensive coordinator, probably. Finally, thoughts on Cat joining the Knicks, and the Nova Knicks are now no more.
I actually like the trade for the Sixers better.
Why? Because Embiid dominates Cat.
Embiid has just smashed Cat, but again, I go back to DiVincenzo, Hartenstein. Those guys were the tough. They're the heart of that team. You took that away,
right?
I don't know, man. There's a lot of questions about Cat's heart in big games, big moments. They're definitely more talented. All right, I'll be back tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.
This October, Tanger invites you to shop pink and save lives. Your donation of $10 or more to the Breast Cancer Research Foundation helps fuel innovative research that brings us closer to a cure. It also unlocks exclusive savings from brands like Coach, Crocs, Columbia Factory Store, and more to shop all month long. Join us as we mark 30 years of advancing research and empowering hope. Donate and access your exclusive savings today at Tanger.com.